It all begins on the Great Snow Mountain, where all 9 great sects had gathered. From afar, 2 people discuss the presence of supreme grandmasters, including the Sword Emperor, the Blade Emperor, the Spear Phantom, and the Shaolin Abbot. They note that the sects came fully prepared, knowing their opponent is an overwhelmingly powerful man. Furthermore, the sects claim they want to prevent unnecessary bloodshed, but they likely harbor hidden motives. Everything points to their true objective, seizing the legendary martial arts possessed by the man they are hunting. Ultimately, the man laments that they arrived too late and that the target will hardly make it out alive. The young woman with him remarks that the target is notorious as a ruthless slaughterer, claiming this is simply his karma catching up to him. However, the man reminds her that he took down numerous infamous villains who terrorized the entire realm. Even so, the girl points out that he did not just eliminate evil individuals. Great heroes and even the Sword Saint sect were pushed to the brink of ruin by his hands. Because of this, the devastated sect was forced to shut its doors for the next 10 years. The man then asks if he truly deserves to perish solely for that, and the girl insists he does, since he took many innocent lives. Hearing this, the warrior questions whether those people were genuinely innocent, remarking that a pristine appearance does not always guarantee a noble soul. Meanwhile, amid fallen figures, the Proto wonders where he is. He glances around in confusion, and moments later someone calls him the Blood Demon. The Proto wonders if they are addressing him, while the leader of the warriors accuses him of forsaking all righteousness, declaring that today he will pay the ultimate price for throwing the martial world into chaos. At that moment, memories of a blissful past alongside his beloved wife begin to surface, along with the image of his adorable little daughter resting peacefully in his lap. To him, that simple, joyful life with his family was the most precious treasure he ever had. Unfortunately, all that happiness vanished when his wife passed away from an unknown illness. And to make matters worse, their home caught fire during a clash between martial artists. In that blazing fire, his daughter tragically lost her life. From that fateful day on, he lived solely for vengeance, hunting down and eliminating every corrupt warrior he could find. As a result, he ended up eliminating countless martial artists he deemed responsible for his tragedy. Because of this, people began calling him the Blood Demon. Yet, he finds that moniker ridiculous, questioning why no one ever cared about the life of his little girl. Overcome with fury, he wonders what wrong an innocent child could have possibly committed to meet such a tragic end, declaring that those corrupt martial artists must pay for everything he was forced to endure. The Shaolin Abbot asks how the true successor of the martial god could cause such a dreadful slaughter. The Proto replies that he merely did what had to be done, stating that everyone he took down was just trash who had it coming, sending everyone into a rage. Following that, the Proto calls them hypocrites, since they tried to cover up their own crimes and pin all the blame on him, openly mocking their supposed justice. Apparently, his words struck a nerve, as the Blade Emperor becomes furious. Drawing his blade, he snaps that he wants to wrap this up quickly, but the Sword Emperor urges restraint so they do not lose the secrets of the divine art. The Shaolin Abbot reprimands them for coveting the Proto's martial techniques, even in a dire situation like this. Seeing the sheer greed of those corrupt elders, the Proto feels profound disgust, realizing they merely parade behind righteousness to disguise their selfish ambitions. Sick of the charade, the Proto decides he will put an end to all of them, vowing that he will not spare a single one. With that, he unleashes a lightning-fast strike with his sword. The Murim warriors do not even have time to react. Every single one of them is slashed down in the blink of an eye. Moments later, the Proto has defeated nearly all his opponents with just a single sword movement. Yet that is not enough to quench his thirst, and he taunts the remaining elders to step up and face him all at once. Witnessing such an overwhelming display of power, the Grand Masters stand completely frozen. The Blade Emperor snaps back to his senses, burning with rage, and charges forward alongside the other masters, shouting that the Proto will never leave this place alive. The 2 Grand Masters combine their forces and launch a joint assault against the Proto. However, our guy shows not even a shred of fear, gathering energy into his sword to prepare a counterattack. Sensing that monstrous power, the 2 Grandmasters are visibly shaken. Right after, the Proto unleashes a relentless flurry of strikes. The clash lasts merely a few seconds, and the Blade Emperor is taken down with effortless ease. Battered on the ground with his strength nearly depleted, the Blade Emperor acknowledges the terrifying might behind the divine art of the martial god. He admits that the Proto truly lives up to his fearsome name for effortlessly deflecting their combined assault. Meanwhile, another attacker attempts an ambush on the Proto, but he dodges it without breaking a sweat. Had he failed to evade, that strike would have been lethal. The opponent is stunned by how effortlessly the Prota sidestepped the blow, but he quickly sets up his next move, launching a rapid sequence of attacks straight at the Prota. Seeing that his standard moves are useless, the Spear Phantom readies a secret technique. He executes a blinding thrust, piercing the Prota. That strike was shockingly fast, inflicting severe wounds on the Prota. The Spear Phantom sarcastically mocks him, remarking that the Blood Demon looks completely spent. Noting that the Prota has run out of internal energy, he offers to spare him in exchange for the location of the martial god's manual. The Prota realizes the spearman is right, and that he has indeed exhausted nearly all his spiritual energy. Even so, he resolves that he cannot allow his journey to conclude here under any circumstances. Sensing an ominous shift, the Spear Phantom begins to feel uneasy. The Prota begins channeling the tiny fraction of energy left into his blade, resolving to burn through his very own life force. His opponents look on in utter shock, realizing he plans to sacrifice himself to take them all down together. In sheer panic, they shout for everyone to attack and stop his technique before it is too late. Right after, their attacks collide, triggering a massive explosion. Following the blast, the Prota is left critically injured, realizing he has reached the very limit of his physical lifespan. He laments not having at least one more year to live so he could fully accomplish his vengeance. He then whispers an apology to his beloved Yule for failing to keep his promise. Reaching out his hand, he asks for his wife's forgiveness as he prepares to finally reunite with his family in the afterlife. But right when he believes everything has reached its final chapter, something extraordinary happens. He hears a sweet voice calling him Daddy and catches the warm, bright smile of his daughter. The Prota is utterly bewildered as his little girl gently nudges him to wake up. Right after, his wife comes into view, looking vibrant, radiant, and completely healthy. The little girl dashes joyfully toward her mother, calling out to her with pure affection. Watching this scene unfold, the Prota is overwhelmed with emotion, realizing he has genuinely returned back to the time when he was truly happy, long before tragedy struck his wife and daughter. Living in a humble home, far removed from all the warfare. Beaming with excitement, the little girl proudly displays a lovely flower crown her mother crafted for her. Several days have passed since that moment, yet he still struggles to fully process that this is real. He was certain his life had ended, wondering if this could be an intricate illusion array or mental technique. However, he quickly dismisses that notion, knowing it makes no sense for the Orthodox leaders to waste a high-level illusion on him. Thus, the Prota begins to accept the only logical possibility left. The plain truth is that he has mysteriously regressed back in time, yet he knows that if the future unfolds the same way, this peaceful life with his adorable daughter will not last long. Right then, the little girl runs over happily calling for her father, who scoops her up with all the love in his heart. Seeing her radiant smile, the Prota swears to himself that he will never let that horrific tragedy repeat itself. To guarantee his family's safety, he knows he must take decisive action before it is too late. His wife packs a bundle of food for his trip, asking if he will truly be gone for about 2 weeks. He confirms the timeline and apologizes for the abrupt departure, but she offers full support, asking only that he return safely. Little Soil tiptoes over, sweetly asking if she can tag along on her father's journey. Her father explains he has urgent business to settle, promising to bring back sweet treats if she stays on her best behavior. The little girl happily agrees and tells her dad to stay safe, melting his heart with her sweet affection. With that, our hero straps his pack on his back and begins his journey, entirely focused on his mission. He bids them farewell with a confident look before setting foot on the road. Walking alone, he reminds himself that he will never allow his precious family to be taken from him again. However, a crucial reality sinks in. Only his soul managed to travel back to the past. This means that all the overwhelming might he wielded as the Blood Demon is completely gone. He understands that to protect his loved ones, he must attain monumental strength capable of overcoming any threat. Guided by this resolve, he arrives before the entrance of a mysterious cavern tucked away inside the forest. The Prota begins crawling carefully through a narrow, pitch-black tunnel inside the cave. He recalls there was a very specific reason a humble scholar like him managed to become the feared Blood Demon in the first place. In a realm crowded with supreme grandmasters, there was a secret reason he could whip up such a crimson storm in his past life. That secret was the skeletal remains of the martial god, revered as the absolute greatest warrior in all of history. The Prota was the only person in the entire world who ever stumbled upon his resting place inside this cave. He remembers when enemies relentlessly hunted him down, framing him for attempting an ambush on a sect leader. Back then, wounded and powerless, he fled desperately just to keep himself alive. He felt utterly helpless, burning with indignation over his lack of strength to defend himself. He questioned whether he was truly incapable of bringing down the man responsible for the loss of his little daughter. After losing Soil, he tracked down the men who set his village ablaze and uncovered the true mastermind behind it all. Yet, being nothing more than an ordinary scholar, there was absolutely nothing he could do against them. But it was precisely while running from those assassins that he found this cave and managed to survive. Thankfully, in this current timeline, he locates that hidden sanctuary once again without any trouble. The Prota now wonders if what he discovered in his past life will manifest before his eyes once more. Right on cue, a mysterious, glowing orb begins materializing directly before him. Radiant golden energy shines brightly, cutting straight through the deep gloom of the stone cavern. This is the sacred relic preserved beside the skeletal remains of the legendary martial god. He finds it incredible how that orb simply appeared before him in the past, almost as if it had been waiting for him all along. Sealed inside that small sphere is the legendary celestial martial divine art, containing the supreme might of the martial god. With absolute resolve in his eyes, the Prota prepares to absorb all that power once again. He reaches out his hand, determined to start his journey from scratch to protect the people he loves. Powerful golden energy surges rapidly into the Prota's body. The glowing orb merges directly into his chest, initiating a massive transformation. The process instantly turns excruciating, forcing our hero to groan in pain from the intense pressure. Knowing he already endured this brutal agony in his previous life, he grits his teeth, determined to push through to the end. He lets out a fierce roar, knowing that enduring this trial is his only pathway to safeguarding his family. Meanwhile, crows circle the overcast skies above a grim and desolate mountain region. In the distance, a defeated warrior on the ground warns his opponent that this is by no means the end of the line. With a sinister smirk and glowing red eyes filled with malice, the dark figure declares that the shadows will soon rise again. He warns that when the promised day finally arrives, the entire board will flip. He vows that the dark realm will engulf everything once and for all. Right after, he delivers a ruthless finishing strike, ending his opponent's life. Suddenly, the Prota's eyes snap wide open as he jolts awake from that intense vision. He gasps for air, still trembling from the weight of what he just witnessed. Realizing he must have blacked out, he wonders how much time has passed, deeply intrigued by that vision. He reflects that everything felt far too vivid to be a mere dream, noting he had never seen anything like it before. Looking over at the skeletal remains of the martial god, he ponders if those could have been the master's own memories. He realizes nothing is set in stone since his regression, but he knows he must keep pressing forward. He senses he has successfully absorbed the legendary divine art and that his physical vessel has undergone a massive refinement. He understands that to rewrite the grim future awaiting him, he must reach even greater heights this time around. However, the Prota looks down in mild disgust upon realizing he is completely covered in black impurities and grime. Seeing that his clothes have been shredded to rags, he decides to change into fresh attire so he can return home looking presentable. Now dressed in clean clothes with his pack ready, he prepares to depart from the hidden cavern. Before stepping out, he gives a deep, respectful bow toward the physical remains of his master. He expresses heartfelt gratitude for being granted such a monumental opportunity to reshape his destiny. He vows to wield this divine power to protect his household and honor this tremendous blessing. The Prota finally begins walking toward the cavern's exit, ready to head back home. Stepping outside, he breathes in the fresh forest air, feeling completely revitalized and immensely stronger. With sharp focus and unwavering determination, he decides it is time to pick up the pace. Bending his knees, he readies himself to make a breathtaking leap using his newly acquired abilities. He launches himself skyward with explosive force, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. He begins dashing across the treetops at blinding speed, relishing the sheer lightness of his body. Thrilled by his rapid progress, he hurries along, eager to return to his cherished home. Our hero smiles warmly at the thought of soon being back in the arms of his beloved wife and little daughter. The journey back seemed peaceful, with picturesque mountain ranges gracing the distant horizon. However, he notices with concern that his trip took a few more days than originally planned. Knowing his family must be anxiously awaiting his return, he decides to push his speed even further. Meanwhile, the peaceful Sodom village goes about its daily routine, filled with warm and friendly locals. At the village market, a friendly neighbor cheerfully greets our hero's wife and little Yule. Another local merchant waves warmly upon seeing the two walking together through the village pathways. The locals chat among themselves about what a delightful mother and daughter duo they are, beloved by everyone around. A stall owner compliments the little girl's cuteness, and she responds with an exceptionally polite greeting. Charmed by the girl's sweetness, the merchant hands her a special sweet treat as a little gift. Little Yule beams from ear to ear, happily thanking the merchant for the delicious snack. She begins munching on it joyfully while her mother and the shopkeeper watch her with warm affection. The merchant asks about the girl's father, and the mother explains he is away on travel, prompting the vendor to gently advise them to head home early. She whispers in concern that it is almost time for those troublesome men to show up around here. She is referring to dangerous thugs who shake down the locals for protection money under the guise of village security. The gang leader demands their monthly fee, but one of the villagers bravely speaks out, accusing them of outright extortion. Being called a petty street crook instantly sets the gang leader off, infuriating him. Completely enraged by the man's defiance, the thug begins drawing his weapon to strike him down. The village elders and bystanders descend into absolute panic upon realizing how bad things are turning. Desperate to prevent a tragedy, the village elder steps in swiftly, assuring them that the fee will be paid in full. He drops to his knees pleading for leniency, promising to hand over every single coin the thugs demand. Pleased with the easy score, the bandits laugh it off and take their leave, warning that they will return next month. The villagers are left disheartened and deeply frightened by the perpetual threat posed by that gang. Our hero's wife grows anxious over the lack of news from her husband, especially with those thugs roaming around. Trying to keep her composure for her daughter's sake, she takes little Yule by the hand and decides to head straight home. Meanwhile, a strong breeze rustles through the lush forest surrounding the peaceful settlement. Little Soil suddenly glances upward with curious eyes, wondering if her daddy is finally coming home. The two continue their walk back home as green leaves drift gently around them. They stroll along peacefully, completely unaware that someone is watching over them from close by. The Proto was perched silently among the tree branches, quietly surveying the entire perimeter. Meanwhile, the bandit leader holds up the stolen coin pouch, chuckling at how heavy it feels in his hand. They joke among themselves about how peaceful villages like this are always effortless targets for easy cash. The thugs continue plotting horrific schemes, talking about selling the women and putting the men into forced labor. But their plans are suddenly cut short by a calm, mysterious voice echoing right behind them. Startled by the sudden intrusion, the group of criminals turns around immediately to face the intruder. The gang leader snaps in anger, demanding to know who on earth this kid is to stand in their way. With a deadly serious gaze, the Proto calmly states that he is offering them a single chance. He orders them to turn around, return the coin pouch, apologize, and swear never to step foot in this village again. The bandits treat it like a total joke and burst out laughing at the sheer audacity of this young scholar. One of the thugs approaches our hero smugly, mocking him and calling him the village's grand protector. Poking the Proto in the chest, he sneers that the kid looks like the one who desperately needs protection here. But before he can even finish his sentence, the thug is struck by an absurdly swift and devastating punch. The thug's face is completely shattered under the sheer impact of our hero's crushing blow. The remaining criminals stare at the scene in absolute shock, unable to comprehend the sheer speed of that strike. The thug drops unconscious to the dirt, sending his comrades into a panic as they witness his ruined state. Consumed by rage, another bandit draws his blade and charges with everything he has to strike the Proto down. He leaps forward, aiming his weapon straight at the young man's head, swearing to end his life on the spot. Showing zero concern over the incoming aerial strike, the Proto simply balls his fist. He unleashes another thunderous blow, hitting the attacker dead on before the blade can even get close. The Proto looks down at the remaining thugs with cold eyes, sighing at the pointlessness of it all. He points out that he gave them a fair warning, while the bandit leader collapses onto his backside in pure terror. The boss realizes in sheer horror that the young man struck his men's vital pressure points with absolute precision. A cold sweat breaks out across his forehead as he realizes this kid's movements were far too fast to track. Desperate, the gang leader begs to know who this mysterious, overpowered youth truly is. Calm as ever, the Proto simply answers that he is just the local village school teacher. The thug trembles in terror upon realizing he is now the sole survivor left standing from his entire crew. Our hero then coldly asks him what he plans to do next in this hopeless situation. The gang leader hands back the money pouch and drops to his knees before the village elder, leaving everyone utterly baffled. He weeps uncontrollably on the ground, begging for forgiveness in the most humiliating fashion for his misdeeds. The crook even offers to strip off his own clothes to give away, making the elder feel deeply awkward. He vows never to set foot in that village again and bolts away as fast as his legs can carry him. The villagers are left utterly stunned, unable to fathom what caused such a dramatic change of heart from that thug. Deep in the woods, the panting gang leader tells the Proto that he carried out every single order he was given. Trembling with fear, he asks in a shaky voice if he is finally permitted to walk away. But the prota appears directly behind him, coldly asking where he thinks he is going. The bandit pleads, claiming he intends to move far away and live a peaceful, honest life, leaving crime behind for good. Our hero repeats his words with dripping sarcasm, having zero faith in such a convenient redemption story. He stands in silence for a brief moment, his face masked by the shadows of the forest canopy. With a chilling gleam in his eyes, he asks the thug if he honestly believes wicked people can change their stripes. Our hero reveals he already knows they are fugitives from an orthodox sect, sending the man into total shock. He recalls how, in his past life, this very gang raided the village, pillaged everything, and sold the residents into bondage. Even though the Muram alliance eventually punished the bandits months later, the village's peace had already been ruined forever. Because of that, the prota resolves that they must pay the rightful price for the horrors they committed. He asserts that some people simply never change, while the bandit leader screams in absolute terror on the ground. The thug realizes too late that his end is staring him in the face, with zero hope for salvation. The prota steps forward relentlessly, proving he never had any intention of letting him leave this forest alive. Back at the house, little Soil waited impatiently, playing on the floor and humming softly to herself. Suddenly, she hears footsteps approaching and lets out a joyful squeal upon realizing who it is. The prota finally returns from his journey, and his little daughter dashes excitedly into his arms. He lifts her up, asking if she was a good girl, while his wife watches from the doorway in pleasant surprise. She asks why he took so long and looks him over with concern, relieved to see he is completely unharmed. He apologizes for causing worry, quickly making up an excuse about having too many students to tutor. The little girl playfully warns that she will give him a smack if he is ever late again, bringing a relieved smile to her mother's face. However, observing her husband more closely, the wife senses something about him is distinctly different from before. She touches our hero's cheek, asking why his complexion looks so radiant, leaving him slightly flustered. She playfully teases that he looks taller and broader, but he brushes it off, saying he is way past his growing years. He knows he suppressed his inner energy, but concealing his physical body refinement proved impossible before her sharp eyes. Without warning, his wife grabs both his cheeks and pinches them with surprising firmness. With a delightfully terrifying smile, she asks what exactly he was up to during all that time away from home. The prota breaks into a nervous sweat, scrambling to find a quick explanation to ease his wife's suspicions. Fortunately, he is saved by his own stomach, which lets out an extraordinarily loud growl at that exact moment. His wife lets go of his cheeks instantly, staring at him in utter surprise at the sheer volume of the sound. Moments later, she cannot hold it in anymore and bursts into hearty laughter at the comical situation. She warmly asks if he has eaten yet, while little Soil pulls him inside, announcing that Daddy is starving. Suspecting he might be hiding something, she still trusts him and invites him in for a warm, hearty bowl of beef soup. Our hero smiles in relief and happily accepts, eager to spend quality time with his family. However, the prota suddenly freezes in his tracks as he notices something deeply disturbing. He locks his gaze onto his wife's hand and spots a faint trace of dark energy seeping from her body. Our hero closely examines those subtle marks at her fingertips, immediately going on maximum alert. A horrific thought crosses his mind as he realizes his beloved might be suffering from poisoning. Later that night, while his wife and little daughter sleep soundly in bed, the prota watches over them in silence, feeling a sharp pang of grief as painful memories from his past life resurface. He remembers how his wife suffered through identical symptoms before passing away from that supposed illness. Determined to rewrite that cruel fate, he begins channeling his golden divine energy directly into her body. Analyzing her condition closely, he confirms his worst fears of poisoning and focuses on mapping the toxin's flow. He notices that most of the poison has gathered around her energy core, though it appears to be a recent accumulation. Fully aware of the risks, the prota concentrates all his spiritual power to purge that deadly corruption from her system. He executes the process with delicate precision to avoid damaging her internal energy pathways. With complete success, he finally extracts every trace of that toxic aura from inside his wife. The young man condenses the expelled toxin onto his palm, carefully analyzing the dark sphere's composition. He discovers that it is a lethal, vicious poison, something he was completely blind to during his previous life. He wonders whether this was newly introduced or simply a horrifying detail he failed to catch back then. He concludes that a standard village physician could never detect this, meaning her previous demise was an orchestrated hit. Recalling that she is a daughter of the formidable Pung clan, he realizes the poisoner must be at least an elite master. Overcome with burning fury, he vows to eliminate anyone who dares threaten the safety of his precious family. The following morning, his wife cheerfully mentions that she is heading out with little Soil to shop at the market. Our hero wishes them a pleasant trip, while their little daughter waves goodbye, hopping with pure joy. Watching them leave safely, he decides it is time for him to make his own move and handle this situation. Meanwhile, hiding behind a tree, the village physician is baffled to see that the poison symptoms have completely vanished. He watches our hero's wife walking normally and tries to convince himself that he must have misread the signs. The man reassures himself that he did his job properly and that nothing should derail the mysterious client's grand scheme. But, out of nowhere, the Proto materializes right before his face, sending the fake doctor into an absolute panic. The traitor frantically asks who he is, while our hero coldly confirms that he has finally tracked down the culprit. The man stammers, lost for words, but the Proto tells him he has only one single question to ask. He directly demands to know who gave the orders to poison his wife, knowing full well the man did not act alone. The assassin draws his dagger with a sneer, claiming he will tell him the truth right before ending our hero's life. The traitor bitterly snaps that she betrayed them first, making the Proto very intrigued by the mention of the mysterious client. He readies his stance, promising to reveal his master's identity in the most merciless way possible. With a furious shout, the assassin lunges at our hero, yelling that he can find out the truth in the next world. Yet the Proto does not even flinch, casually staring down the assault with icy, glowing red eyes. With absurd precision, the young hero catches and stops the strike, using nothing more than his bare fingertips. The assassin freezes, gasping for air as he sees his razor-sharp daggers halted with such ridiculous ease. He can barely process the disbelief of having his lethal blow neutralized so effortlessly. Without giving him a moment to react, the Proto drives a crushing right hook straight into his jaw. The force of the blow sends the traitor flying backward through the air, crashing hard along the forest path. He slams violently onto the rocky dirt, letting out an agonizing groan as he coughs up a heavy mouthful of blood. The Proto walks over casually toward the fallen man, his footsteps echoing through the quiet woods. Standing over the criminal, he repeats the question with a bone-chilling tone, demanding the mastermind's name. Shivering in sheer horror, the man finally cracks, confessing that the client is the young master of the Sichuan Tang clan. The Proto locks his focus on the revelation, processing this critical piece of intel regarding his wife's enemies. The mastermind is none other than the ruthless Tang Gui, the eldest heir of the renowned clan famous for deadly poisons. The Sichuan Tang clan is notorious across the entire world for being unmatched masters of hidden weapons and lethal toxins. Our hero wonders why the Tang clan heir would specifically target a daughter of the rival Peng clan. The traitor reveals it as an open secret that the young master harbored a twisted, unhealthy obsession with his wife. He explains that the Tang clan attempted to force a marriage arrangement, but she slipped away in the dead of night with a humble scholar. Our hero recalls that back then, they simply ran away from the strict expectations of the Peng clan to live in peace. He knows full well that an orphaned, ordinary scholar like him would never be accepted by such a traditional warrior lineage. He realizes the Tang leader must have felt that a lowly teacher completely ruined his grand marriage plans. Even while understanding his rival's spite, the Proto refuses to forgive someone who would commit such a vile act against her. The fake physician frantically begs for his life, swearing he has told our hero every single detail he knows. The young man coldly asks why on earth he should spare him, leaving the cornered traitor trembling in utter dread. The traitor attempts a desperate threat, claiming the Tang clan will hunt him down, but the Proto flatly replies that he already knows. He mentions the well-known adage that the Tang clan never forgets a debt, whether it is a favor of gratitude or a blood vendetta. However, our hero emphasizes that the exact same rule applies to him, while the man on the ground screams that he will regret this. The Proto bluntly shuts the criminal up before he can finish his empty threat. Gripping the traitor's face firmly, he issues a chilling warning, making sure one single fact is crystal clear. With a demonic gleam in his eyes, he states that this demise is merely settling the massive debt the man owes him. He releases his overwhelming energy into the traitor's body, forcing him to pay the ultimate price for his wicked deeds. Moments later, our hero's hand is stained with blood after carrying out his ruthless judgment. Wiping away the residue, the Proto decides he must make a swift, urgent trip to Sichuan to settle the score. Meanwhile, inside the lavish Blue Flower Pavilion in Sichuan, the vile Tang heir is enjoying his evening surrounded by courtesans. Smirking arrogantly, he boasts that something truly wonderful has unfolded, oozing the spoiled confidence of an entitled heir. One of the women curiously asks what happened, and he decides to indulge them with a story about a rare flower he desired for years. He spins a bizarre, poetic tale about his obsession, while the women mistake it for a charming romance. Yet the dark look in his eyes tells a far sinister truth, revealing his only sick ambition was to possess her by force. The villain sadistically imagines what it would be like to keep that radiant flower beside him, just to crush it without mercy. He revels in imagining the expression of agony she would make, savoring how much joy it would bring to his hollow soul. He laments failing to claim her in the end, but smirks wickedly, confident his desire will be fulfilled in another way. He rationalizes his cruelty by claiming that since she ran away to hide from him, making her suffer from afar is only fair. Thus, in absolute secrecy, he concocted a vile scheme to ensure she would slowly suffocate to her demise. He reveals his madness by violently tightening his grip around the neck of one of the courtesans, choking her cold-bloodedly against the couch. He asks how agonizing it feels to have the breath slowly squeezed from one's lungs. However, his sadistic game is cut short by the sudden arrival of powerful guests inside the grand hall. These are the infamous black and white twin demons, two extraordinarily formidable mercenaries who have just entered the room. Tanguy immediately adopts a respectful tone, bowing and extending a warm welcome to his powerful allies. They tease him for drinking alone, but the young master excuses himself, claiming he was just eager for their meeting. He invites the mercenaries to discuss the region's future, and they share a cheerful toast, looking forward to the day he claims leadership of the clan. Yet beneath that friendly smile, the young master secretly considers them nothing more than absolute trash. He knows the twins would commit any atrocity for the right price, but acknowledges their sheer brutality will prove very useful. Offering them seats, he reflects on needing more power and leverage to ensure no one in the region dares look down on him. He recalls when his younger brother, Tang Mujun, tried to warn him about their mother's concern, only to be told to shut his mouth. He accused his brother of preaching morals under the guise of their mother's worry, claiming he was always looking down on him. Despite his brother's sincere pleas, the young master shouted that he was sick of hearing him call him brother. That brother was Tang Mujun, widely hailed as the greatest prodigy the Sichuan Tang clan had ever produced in its entire history. The youth carried all the high hopes and focus of the Grand Patriarch, the Poison Venerable, and the current clan leader. He harbored a toxic jealousy, convinced his brother acted like the clan already belonged to him ever since their father entered secluded training. Returning to the present, he pushes those thoughts aside as the twins toast to his upcoming ascension as the future patriarch. The three share a celebratory drink, sealing a dark alliance that promises to bring massive chaos across the entire region. With a manic grin driven by pure greed, the young master celebrates that the clan's leadership will soon fall into his grasp. Suddenly, the ceiling crashes down violently in a shower of debris, completely shattering their celebration. A body is hurled downward with immense force, slamming hard right into the center of their banquet table. The courtesans scream in terror amid the rising dust, while the mercenaries scramble to identify who dared breach the room. The white-bearded giant realizes an uninvited guest has just completely ruined their party. Glancing at the battered guards on the floor, they demand to know the identity of the masked intruder standing before them. The Prota coldly remarks that while he already knew the young master was trash, he never imagined he would be this pathetic. Intrigued, the villain sneers and asks if the intruder thinks he knows him well enough to speak so boldly. With a chilling gaze, our hero confirms it, calling him the single most shameful stain in the entire history of the Tang clan. As the villain boils with rage, the dark-skinned giant chuckles, warning the intruder that he picked the worst possible day to seek revenge. The other twin assures they will handle this pest as a complimentary favor for their deal, earning the young master's gratitude. The giant steps forward, dragging heavy iron chains, arrogantly offering to spare his life if he gets down on his knees and begs. Calm and straightforward as ever, our hero simply turns down the mercenaries' ridiculous offer. Annoyed by the young man's nerve, the white-bearded giant hurls his massive iron mace straight toward him. The heavy weapon spins through the air at high speed, tearing forward with crushing momentum. They charge in shouting that they will grind him to dust, while our hero stands completely still, tracking the incoming strike. The two attack in flawless sync, combining their raw muscle in a coordinated and devastating assault. The massive iron sphere crashes down violently, making the wooden floorboards shake from the impact. A huge cloud of dust and splintered wood erupts from the devastating impact zone of that heavy weapon. The twins watch the smoke settle, fully convinced they wiped out their opponent with that single strike. But the white-bearded one quickly notices the intruder was fast enough to evade, complimenting his nimbleness. The dark-bearded giant also eyes him with caution, recognizing their opponent is no ordinary fighter. Our hero leaps gracefully above them, preparing to launch a decisive counterstrike from the air. With blinding speed, the Proto descends and locks his grip firmly onto the dark-bearded giant's face. Using his immense force, he slams the opponent's head straight into the floorboards, coldly announcing that the first one is down. Our hero immediately vaults back into the air with agility, getting ready for the next move. The mercenary's skull fractures under the immense pressure of our hero's devastating takedown. The giant is knocked out instantly in a single move, leaving his partner in complete disbelief. The impact was so overwhelming that it shattered the opponent's defenses before he could even mount a reaction. The surviving giant watches the scene in a cold sweat, paralyzed with dread after seeing his brother taken down so effortlessly. He screams frantically for his fallen sibling, while the Proto lands lightly and quietly on the floorboards. Burning with rage, he yells, asking how he dared do that, declaring that even wild beasts mourn the loss of their kin. The mercenary grits his teeth in pure fury, gathering all his energy to avenge his defeated brother. His heavy iron chains begin radiating with a bright, destructive blue aura. He lashes out wildly, swinging his glowing chains directly at the masked hero. He swears with venom that he will repay this offense by tearing the Proto limb from limb. The energized iron mace flies toward the Proto, demolishing everything in its path. Yet our hero merely watches the incoming attack with absolute calm, showing zero signs of distress. The white demon grinds his teeth in sheer rage, stammering with hatred as he glares at the Proto. Letting out a furious roar, he hurls his massive iron mace with all his might straight at the young man. Watching the scene, Tang Guhui is left completely bewildered, realizing the white demon is getting totally outclassed. The villain knows the mercenary is a formidable warrior, yet notices all his moves are being read like an open book. The young master decides he needs to bolt immediately, but his escape is abruptly cut short by a sudden shock. Out of nowhere, our hero extends his arm and catches the massive iron sphere mid-air with just a single hand. The mercenary grips the chain from the other end, trembling as he watches his weapon halted with effortless ease. He notices in sheer panic that his internal energy has stopped flowing, wondering if he has completely lost control of the fight. The giant cannot stomach being dominated in such a humiliating manner by a mere kid. The Proto points out that the mercenary's greatest crime was simply treating human life like trash. Tugging on the chain, the young man begins setting up the final strike against the white-bearded giant. With an icy glare, our hero declares that this merciless attitude is the exact reason his time is up right now. The mercenary's eyes widen in absolute horror as he sees his own heavy weapon flying straight back at him. In total shock, the giant barely manages to stammer a word before taking a direct hit from the iron mace. The brutal impact completely tears through the opponent, sending a spray of crimson through the air. The white demon's lifeless body crashes onto the wooden floor, concluding the battle against the giants. With both adversaries down, the Proto slowly turns his gaze toward his true target. The Proto walks over to the young master and coldly apologizes for keeping him waiting. Tang Guhui shakes in absolute terror as he tries to process what just unfolded right before his eyes. The villain realizes the young man toyed with those legendary mercenaries like little kids before wiping them out. He swallows hard, coming to terms with the fact that the masked intruder before him is an absolute monster in combat. Breaking into a cold sweat, the young master concludes this warrior might be just as formidable as his own father. Tang Guhui tries to bargain, asking how much was paid for his head, leaving the Proto amused by the desperate offer. The villain claims he can double whatever petty sum our hero received if he agrees to switch sides and work for him. Our hero finds the pitch laughable, but the young master pushes further, offering to triple the amount to secure his loyalty. Stepping closer to the villain, the Proto calmly reveals that he was the one who put out that contract himself. He recalls with deep bitterness how pathetic and clueless his future self was for failing to see his wife slowly dying of poison. The Proto reveals it was that desperate future version of himself who demanded the demise of the Tang clan's young master. The villain thinks the kid has completely lost his mind talking nonsense, but the pieces suddenly start coming together. He repeats the words about a wife dying of poison, beginning to suspect the true identity of the woman. The young master instantly remembers Peng Xiaoyan, the woman he secretly ordered to be poisoned in the past. Pointing a trembling finger, he asks in shock if the intruder is Peng Xiaoyan's husband, and our hero coldly confirms it. The villain bursts into wild laughter upon realizing that the lowly scholar he thought he could eliminate any time caused all this chaos. He cannot wrap his head around the fact that such a seemingly weak man was responsible for wiping out his entire setup. Suddenly, our hero hears guards shouting as they rush in, calling frantically for the clan's young master. Multiple Tang clan guards storm the room in a hurry, desperately asking if their master is unharmed. The guards encircle the Prota with their weapons, urging the young master to seize the opening and escape. The villain looks at his men and mocks them in his mind, knowing full well the hero would wipe them out in seconds. But right after, a sinister, twisted idea sparks in the young master's head as he evaluates the situation. He grabs several purple poison pellets in his hands, reasoning that since his men will fall anyway, he might as well use them. The villain slams the toxic pellets onto the floor, deciding his own subordinates will serve as the sacrificial smokescreen for his getaway. Upon hitting the ground, the spheres shatter, instantly releasing a thick, glowing purple mist. The guards begin screaming in pure agony as they are caught completely off guard by their own master's deadly fumes. One of the henchmen coughs up blood, asking why his master betrayed them, before dropping lifeless to the floor. Tang Gui laughs like a maniac, boasting that no matter how strong the hero is, he can never withstand the supreme poison of the Tang clan. Suddenly, the villain's smirk vanishes, his face freezing in absolute dread as he spots something eerie within the mist. Our hero remains standing perfectly calm in the middle of the toxic cloud, his hand radiating with a powerful golden energy. With a swift, effortless wave of his arm, the Prota begins dispersing the thick, toxic smoke surrounding him. The sheer force of the motion generates a massive shockwave, completely blowing the poison out of the room in stunning fashion. The young master is left utterly speechless watching the smoke clear, realizing his cowardly trick did not even scratch the young man. Tang Gui tries to laugh it off to mask his terror, but stumbles backward nervously as the uninjured Prota closes in. With a dark gaze, our hero warns that scum like him do not even deserve to breathe the same air as everyone else. He recalls the mercenary twins, vile criminals whom he had already taken down in his previous life. The Prota also knows Tang Gui backed these ruthless outlaws in exchange for securing total dominion over Sichuan. Cornered with nowhere left to run, the young master drops to his knees, pathetically begging for mercy. Knowing full well the vile intentions this coward harbored against his wife, our hero channels energy straight into his fingertips. Our hero delivers swift pinpoint strikes to the villain's pressure points, making him howl in agony. The young man coldly explains that he is executing a brutal bone dislocation and tendon rupturing technique. The villain's agony is absolute as his internal energy pathways and joints are systematically torn apart. Suddenly, several flying daggers are hurled at extreme speed straight toward the Prota to halt the punishment. Sensing the surprise attack from behind, our hero quickly turns his attention to the newcomer who just stepped in. Moving with incredible agility, the young man dodges and parries every lethal blade in a single clean sweep. A young master clad in dark garments steps into the room, firmly declaring that this has gone far enough. The newcomer states that no matter how disgraceful his brother may be, he is still the eldest son of their household. Several more daggers bury themselves into the wooden floorboards, showcasing the pinpoint accuracy of this new opponent. The young warrior leaps into the air with grace, unleashing another rapid barrage of hidden weapons right at our hero. The Prota dodges the flying blades with effortless mastery, weaving through the room like a true phantom. Seizing an opening, the opponent darts in to attempt a close-quarter strike using a concealed dagger. However, our hero anticipates the move and firmly catches the attacker's wrist, shutting down his momentum completely. Without missing a beat, the opponent uses his free hand to launch poison needles from point-blank range at the young man. The Prota reacts instantly, delivering a heavy counterstrike straight into the opponent's chest. The sheer impact of the hit blasts the young fighter backward, sending him skidding across the floorboards. The two square off at a distance once more, sizing up each other's strength after that rapid exchange. That formidable warrior is Tang Mujun, widely celebrated as the greatest prodigy in the history of the Sichuan Tang clan. The Prota recalls that even while resenting righteous heroes in his past life, he could not help but respect this young man. Back when he was known as the dreaded blood demon, this young man's genuine kindness provided him his only day of true peace. Our hero quietly regrets that they have crossed paths under these circumstances, yet feels relieved to see him doing well. Tang Mujun focuses his gaze entirely on the masked intruder, realizing he is up against an opponent of an absurd caliber. He launches repeated strikes with his daggers, only to be shocked as the hero evades every single blow by a hair's breadth. With sweat dripping down his face, the young prodigy begins suspecting that his opponent is intentionally holding back. He admits to himself that winning this duel might be out of reach, yet feels a strange thrill from the clash. The opponent kicks off the ground with full force, cracking the wooden floor as he launches another fierce offensive. He gathers a dense surge of green energy around himself, preparing his absolute strongest technique. Leaping from above, he fires off dozens of glowing needles and blades directly at the masked hero. With fluid, effortless maneuvers, the Prota evades every single hidden weapon raining down on him. The opponent tries to follow up with a punch upon landing, but the young man sidesteps it cleanly with a simple tilt of his body. The sharp blade cuts through empty air, failing to leave so much as a scratch on our hero's mask or robes. He tries a swift sweep kick, but our hero hops lightly, dodging the attack with ridiculous ease. The Tang prodigy lets out a respectful half-smile, confirming his opponent is truly an exceptional powerhouse. He silently laments that even his fastest techniques cannot manage to graze the intruder. Burning with frustration, the young warrior charges forward again, feeling humbled by the fact that the opponent is purely dodging. He unleashes a frantic barrage of energy-infused slashes, determined to break through his guard. 3 lethal blades graze inches from our hero's face, yet he remains entirely unbothered beneath the assault. At the perfect split second, the Prota reaches out and firmly locks the opponent's weapon arm, cutting off his momentum. In the blink of an eye, our hero flashes behind Tang Mujun, pressing a cold, sharp blade directly against his throat. The young prodigy tries to react, only to realize in shock that his body cannot move, accepting that this might be the end for him. However, instead of taking his life, the Prota slowly pulls the blade away from his neck, leaving him utterly confused. Tang Mujun asks in disbelief why he did not finish the job, and our hero replies that he is actually the one in debt here. Tang Mujun pleads that if this is over an old grudge, his brother's ruined state is already punishment enough. He points out that his older brother is practically crippled now, asking if it is truly necessary to push things further. Tang Mujun argues that the Tang clan itself will thoroughly investigate the truth, so there is no need to continue the retribution. Our hero agrees to honor his request, bringing relief to the youth, but immediately adds that there is one condition. With an ominous gaze, the Prota states that while things seem settled, there is still one specific detail he cannot tolerate. Reaching his hand out menacingly, he reveals he refuses to leave the slightest chance for the villain to ever restore his martial arts. Utterly panicked by our hero's ruthless intent, Tang Mujun screams for him to wait. Without giving anyone time to react, the Prota delivers a crushing strike straight into Tang Gui's chest, targeting his dantian. The villain lets out a muffled scream of pure agony as the devastating impact completely shatters his cultivation foundation. The young master's dantian fractures beyond repair from the shock, permanently ending his days as a martial artist. His energy core shatters entirely under the crushing force, making the villain wail in overwhelming pain. Tang Mujun rushes over in panic, crying out for his older brother, who drops unconscious to the floor after losing all his power. He whispers an apology to his injured brother and swiftly presses his vital points to stop the bleeding and dull the pain. The unconscious villain bleeds from the corner of his mouth, permanently disabled for the rest of his days. Tang Mujun questions if our hero truly had to go that far, to which the young man simply fires back, asking if he found that excessive. Our hero decides to ask a pointed question, demanding to know where he was and what he was doing while his brother committed countless atrocities. The young man accuses the prodigy of merely pretending to restrain his older brother without ever stepping in to truly stop him. The Prota bluntly concludes that, in reality, Tang Mujun acted as nothing more than a cowardly bystander throughout it all. He warns that spending his life as a crippled shell is only a fraction of the price the villain owes for his crimes. Tang Mujun stands frozen, struggling to form words, but stops when he senses the atmosphere around him shift. Our hero vanishes like the wind, leaving the young prodigy alone in the room, wondering what kind of monster he just encountered. He gazes out at the clan estate beneath the night sky, horrified by the terrifying enemy his brother brought upon them. On a distant mountain, the Prota sits at the edge of a cliff to reflect beneath a brilliantly starry sky. The young man closes his eyes and takes a deep breath, trying to calm the turmoil in his heart after settling that score. Yet, despite his actions, he still feels deeply uneasy about the path his new life is taking. He realizes that even after staining his hands with so much blood to prevent the worst, things remain incredibly complicated. Our hero feels a surge of panic, thinking that a terrible misfortune almost struck his beloved wife once again. Clenching his fist tightly, he asks himself what steps he must take to ensure his family is flawlessly protected. In a quiet bedroom, Yule and Little Soil are fast asleep together, oblivious to the danger that just blew past them. Suddenly, Yule stirs awake from a gentle touch on her shoulder, slowly opening her eyes in the middle of the night. The young man apologizes for waking her so late and asks if they can talk in private for a moment, leaving her puzzled. His wife gently agrees, glancing down at their little daughter, who continues sleeping with a sweet smile on her face. Under the glow of the full moon, the prota decides it is time to have a serious and revealing conversation with his wife. Yul mentions with a hint of concern that bringing up a serious talk in the dead of night is making her a bit uneasy. The young man places his hands gently on his wife's shoulders, causing her eyes to widen in mild surprise. Looking straight into her eyes, the young man firmly suggests that they need to return to the Hebei region. The tree leaves rustle softly in the evening breeze as the weighty proposal hangs in the air. His wife repeats that talking about returning to that place out of nowhere in the middle of the night feels quite intimidating. Feeling apprehensive, she tries to read the grave look on her husband's face to grasp the seriousness of the matter. The young man pulls her into a tender embrace, reaffirming that they truly must head back to Hebei as soon as possible. Yul whispers the region's name in disbelief, clearly reluctant to return to the very land she fled from in the past. She insists it is impossible, questioning whether her father would ever forgive her after abandoning the family like that. She warns that her father will never give our hero peace if they return, but her husband gently cuts in, calling her name with warmth. The young man reassures her that he will be fine, stating that her father still misses her, sparking surprise and curiosity in her eyes. Looking down with a heavy heart, she calls herself a disgrace to her father, believing he has already erased her from his life. Our hero takes her hands firmly and confesses that there was once a time when he thought the exact same way. After all, her father, Peng Mugang, was fiercely opposed to their marriage and swore he would never allow their union. He remembers being convinced the old man would never forgive their elopement, a belief he carried all the way through his past life. However, the young man recalls that shortly after Yul's passing in the previous timeline, the old warrior arrived at their village. Peng Mugang, known across the land as the formidable blade demon of Hebei, approached the lifeless form of his departed daughter. The veteran warrior held his daughter's body in his arms, weeping uncontrollably over her sudden passing. He apologized to the prota, lamenting in tears that his own stubborn pride had caused everything in the end. On that day of mourning, the clan leader offered to take his granddaughter and raise her with all the love in the world as the most treasured child. But our hero turned down the generous offer back then, resolving that he would care for his beloved daughter all on his own. However, it was not long before he bitterly regretted making such a difficult decision. That is why, upon returning to the past, he swore an oath never again to make a choice he would come to regret. And now, he understands that he needs the safe haven and formidable protection provided by the Hebei Peng clan. He urges his wife to think of her father, arguing that no matter what happened, the old man could never truly forget her. Our hero maintains that any father would spend his days constantly worrying if his daughter is doing well and staying safe. And deep down in his heart, the aging father surely missed his precious daughter every single day. Yul listens to her husband's words with a moved heart, yet still shows some hesitation about the reunion. The prota acknowledges that her father was certainly furious, but assures her that anger is far from the only thing he feels. The young man gently holds his wife's hands, telling her that all parents in this world share that exact same feeling. With tears welling up in her eyes, the young woman is deeply touched by how much her husband cares about her feelings. She tries to joke that her father probably does not even consider her family anymore, coaxing a soft chuckle from our hero. The two share a warm embrace under the moonlight, and he asks her to trust that everything will work out from here on out. With their minds made up, they finally prepare to set out on the long journey back to the Hebei region. The next day, dawn brings a bright, peaceful morning, with birds chirping merrily upon the rooftop. Little Soil makes an adorable, funny face while clutching a block of black ink tightly in her hands. She gets ready to pull off some morning mischief, totally focused on her little secret mission. Her mother helps the little girl draw on her sleeping father's face, giggling as she points out where to add more ink. Our hero finally begins to stir, slowly opening one eye as he senses something suspicious going on. He sits up and asks what the two are up to, and they quickly play it off, claiming it is nothing at all. His wife cheerfully tells him to get out of bed and come enjoy the delicious breakfast spread waiting on the table. Catching a glimpse of the funny doodles on his face, he smiles, relieved to have finally enjoyed such a deep, peaceful sleep. The table is packed with a wide variety of delicious dishes, prepared with love to feed the whole family. Sitting down to eat, the wife and daughter cannot hold back their giggles looking at the prota's painted face. His wife then tells him to go wash up before eating, and the little girl chimes in with her own playful laughter. The two burst into cheerful giggles, watching our hero hurry to the back of the house to clean himself up. The young man feigns surprise in the mirror and playfully jokes that he looks dashing, much to the little girl's relief. With the sun shining brightly, Sodom Village glows in a serene and peaceful atmosphere. The villagers gather around, surprised and saddened to learn that this beloved family is about to depart. Our hero thanks everyone for their warmth and apologizes for the sudden leave, while the neighbors urge them to stay. They comment on how much safer the area has felt lately, completely unaware that our hero eliminated all the local bandits. The villagers share that it was an honor having them around, wishing them a safe and smooth journey back to Hebei. Our hero bids farewell to the village elder and gently tells his daughter to say goodbye to all her friends. The little girl gives an exceptionally polite and adorable bow, cheerfully waving goodbye to everyone. Holding hands, the family starts walking along the main path amid warm smiles and fond waves from the entire village. The prota reflects that the only happy memories from his previous life were the precious days spent in this very place. He silently swears that even though he is leaving, he will rush right back to protect it if any danger ever arises. The young man wishes from the bottom of his heart that the kind people of this quiet village remain forever happy. Inside a grand estate, several clan leaders engage in a heated debate over whether to decline a request from the Murim Alliance. They argue loudly around the meeting table about not giving in to outside pressure, tossing accusations of stubbornness back and forth. Suddenly, a massive, powerful fist slams hard onto the wooden table, demanding absolute silence. The supreme leader of the Hebei Peng clan, the formidable Peng Mugang, takes command and asks for his son Jin's perspective. The eldest son, Peng Seo Jin, replies politely, suggesting they should comply with the alliance's request this time around. Another elder warns that if they start yielding now, the alliance will only push for even more outrageous demands later on. The young master explains that dismissing valid requests will hand others ammunition against the clan later, maintaining a level head. The patriarch flashes a proud smile, praising his son for demonstrating such sharp insight into the martial world so early on. Peng Seo Jin bows in gratitude, maintaining a calm and composed posture befitting a future leader. Suddenly, a clan guard rushes into the meeting hall in a frantic hurry to deliver an urgent report. The patriarch turns with a stern glare, asking what this is about, while the messenger stammers nervously trying to speak. The guard struggles to get his words out under the heavy tension, finally managing to announce that the young lady has returned. He declares aloud to the entire hall that Lady Peng Seo Yun has come back to the family estate. Hearing his daughter's name, Patriarch Peng Mugang grips the armrest of his chair with immense force. With an intimidating, dead serious look, the veteran leader gruffly asks who exactly he just claimed has returned. Meanwhile, in Sichuan territory, the imposing and gloomy fortress of the Tang clan looms beneath the dark sky. Looking at his heavily bandaged eldest son in bed, the clan leader asks if he truly orchestrated all of this. Tang Jinwu sighs deeply and laments aloud, admitting he completely failed in raising his heir properly. The patriarch asks who was responsible for destroying his son's dantian, and Tang Mujun reports that the culprit got away. The young master explains he attached a tracking device to the intruder, but his father stops him, reminding him who he was dealing with. He explains seriously that against someone with that level of martial prowess, tracking them is an absolute waste of time. Tang Mujun looks surprised, asking if his father truly intends to let this humiliating incident slide. The patriarch states coldly that the clan never forgets a debt, whether it is a debt of gratitude or a blood vendetta. However, he concludes that right now, the Sichuan Tang clan needs to learn some shame before anything else. The young prodigy sits in silence inside the room, reflecting deeply on the harsh words spoken by his father. Back at the Peng clan, Yul waits anxiously in the parlor beside her daughter, while the prota tries to put her at ease. Suddenly the door slides open, and a familiar voice sweetly calls her name, giving her a mild start. It is Peng Seo Jin, her older brother, who asks with a gentle smile if his dear sister has been doing well all these years. Yul's face lights up with pure joy upon recognizing her beloved brother, calling his name as emotions rush over her. She rushes forward to give him a big hug, remarking on how much he has grown, while he asks if she stayed safe during her time away. Next, the young master politely greets his brother-in-law, and our hero returns the friendly greeting, asking how he has been. Suddenly, the young master feels a gentle tug on his robes and turns around, puzzled to see who is trying to get his attention. He freezes in shock at the sight of the little girl, while the mother smiles and introduces her as his niece Soyul, telling her to say hello to her uncle. With big, sparkling eyes, the little girl shyly stammers the word uncle while looking up at him with sheer cuteness. The young master is hit with an overwhelming wave of pure adorableness, hearing the little girl call him uncle for the very first time. Completely smitten, the uncle shyly asks if he may hold her just once, and the mother happily nods in agreement. Suddenly, the clan matriarcha, Dan Huiyong, bursts into the room with an expression of pure astonishment on her face. She rushes over in tears to embrace her daughter, asking what happened and playfully scolding her as a heartless child for vanishing. The The matriarch weeps, asking how she could leave without a single word, while the young woman apologizes through sobs in her embrace. Resting in her uncle's arms, little Soil watches the scene in confusion, innocently asking why her mommy is crying so much. The woman reassures her daughter while wiping her tears, as the grandmother notices the little girl for the first time with curiosity. The mother explains that this is her granddaughter, telling the little one to greet her grandma, who looks upon her with deep affection. With immense tenderness, the grandmother reaches out and gently pats the head of her sweet, adorable granddaughter. The elderly lady smiles through tears, noticing that the little girl is the spitting image of her mother at that age. Next, the matriarch shifts her serious, emotional gaze toward her son-in-law, who waits quietly in the room. The prota feels a slight wave of tension, realizing the matriarch's full focus is now locked onto him. He offers a deep, respectful bow, sincerely apologizing for the delay in greeting her and for all the worry caused. His wife watches her husband's humble gesture with a worried look, waiting to see how her proud mother will react. The matriarch reflects calmly, noting that it takes two to build a life, acknowledging her daughter's profound love for him. Recognizing how tiring the long journey must have been, she warmly tells him to get some good rest, earning a respectful thank you from the young man. Suddenly, a booming shout from outside shatters the peaceful moment, roaring that this is entirely unacceptable. A heavy boot takes a firm, commanding step into the room, revealing the imposing presence of the newcomer. Patriarch Peng Mugang strides into the room with a commanding aura, radiating immense authority. The prota swallows his nervousness, facing his father-in-law face-to-face for the first time since their return. The old man coldly scoffs at Yule, calling her foolish for throwing everything away just to live in such modest conditions. But Yule does not back down. She meets her father's gaze firmly and asks what is wrong with the life she built. She explains that she left the clan to build something of her own from scratch, and despite tough days, she created her own story. She states that she was genuinely happy in every moment of freedom, living on her own terms rather than following a path chosen by others. The old man flares up upon hearing her challenge his pride, shouting that she acts as though she did nothing wrong. He barks that the clan became a laughingstock because of her youthful rebellion, while the matriarch steps in to calm her husband. Ignoring his outburst, the mother steps closer and asks her daughter directly what the real reason for their return is. The matriarch snaps at her husband with an authoritative scolding, ordering him to stop yelling and scaring everyone in the room. The young master watches his parents bicker, utterly stunned by his mother's energetic pushback. She taps her husband on the chest, accusing him of saying things he does not mean, leaving the formidable patriarch flustered. She reveals that the old man used to cry secretly in his daughter's room and could barely sleep, making him deeply embarrassed. Peng Seojin covers his face in second-hand embarrassment, begging his parents to stop airing their personal business in front of everyone. The matriarch orders her husband to drop the attitude and hold his granddaughter, leaving him completely flabbergasted by the sudden turn. She introduces little Soil to her startled grandfather, encouraging the little one to try saying grandpa for him. With her bright, innocent blue eyes, the adorable little girl looks up at the old man and calls out sweetly to him. The formidable patriarch and legendary warrior is instantly struck by a devastating wave of pure cuteness. Completely stripped of his tough facade, he fumbles awkwardly, wondering what kind of adorable little creature this is. The little girl's sweet, innocent voice completely melts the old man's heart, bringing him right down to his knees before her. The matriarch smiles at the sight, mentioning the girl wants to be held, and the patriarch awkwardly extends his arms in agreement. He lifts his granddaughter up into the air with joy, drawing giggles from the girl and filling the room with smiles and relief. Later on, inside the clan's formal hall, the atmosphere turns quiet as an important conversation begins. The prota sits across the table from his formidable father-in-law to discuss his family's future. Sipping his tea calmly, the old patriarch recalls how headstrong his daughter always was and that opposing her was useless. He shares that she kept insisting she loved him, while he simply hoped she was not making a foolish mistake. The patriarch remembers with bitterness the day he learned his daughter had run away, something he never thought she would do. Back then, the old man swore that the moment he tracked her down, he would bring her back to the family by force. But seeing them in his previous life, it was the first time he had ever seen his daughter wearing an expression of genuine happiness. He admits he only wanted her to live happily, expressing surprise that she chose to return to the family clan. The prota lowers his head with deep respect, offering a sincere apology for all the past troubles. The father-in-law asks if he regrets what he did, and the young man firmly replies that he has zero regrets about his choice. He states that his wife and daughter are his entire reason for living, prompting the old man to ask why he is apologizing then. Our hero explains he is apologizing for the worry caused, but adds that he no longer wants to see his wife estranged from her family. The young man adds that he wants their daughter to know her relatives, and the old man notes his son-in-law seems to have changed quite a bit. With a determined look, the prota vows he will do whatever it takes to protect his family, asking for his blessing to stay. The patriarch is taken aback to see that this once meek scholar now carries such a bold and commanding presence. He lets out a thoughtful grunt as he considers the sincere words and fierce resolve in his son-in-law's eyes. The patriarch grants them permission to return, but thinks to himself that their real challenge will be enduring life inside the Peng clan. The patriarch formally announces that he is allowing him to stay with his family, pleasantly surprising the young man. Our hero bows in gratitude, but the father-in-law warns him to brace himself, as the Peng clan will not go easy on a frail scholar. With a steady, focused gaze, the young man confidently replies that he will welcome any challenge with open arms. The Grand Peng clan estate spreads out majestically, framed by rolling green mountains and dense forests. In a forest near the estate, freshly chopped logs mark the site of the clan's daily training grounds and chores. Under the clear blue sky, the shirtless prota trains with intense focus, gathering a surge of golden energy around himself. He reflects on how a full month has already passed since his family arrived and settled in the Hebei region. The young man notes that his martial arts progress is advancing at an astonishingly faster rate than in his previous life. However, he considers that it is still far too early to reveal his true strength and identity to the rest of the world. The young man understands that to shield his loved ones from all upcoming dangers, he must become significantly stronger. Meanwhile, training shouts ring out across the clan's main courtyard, where several warriors are practicing. A few disciples sparring with swords whisper condescendingly about the scholar brother-in-law, calling him an annoyance. They start scheming a way to provoke and humiliate the young man, but are interrupted as another warrior walks up. It is squad leader No Il-bong, who mockingly asks if they are gossiping about the chief scholar's son-in-law again. They complain bitterly that a nobody dares walk around the young lady, insisting they need to teach him his place. With a sly grin, the leader agrees that they should teach the scholar a lesson using their own methods. The following day, our hero is approached by No Il-bong, who casually asks if he would like to join the morning workout. He remarks that it would be great to spend more time together now that he is part of the clan, putting on a friendly front. He claims it will just be a light jog so as not to exhaust him, secretly hoping the young man takes the bait. The prota accepts the invitation smoothly, and the leader cheerfully sets their meeting for early the next morning. Our hero walks off at an easy pace, while the squad leader watches him from behind, quietly setting his trap. No Il-bong flashes a smug grin, mocking the young man's supposed naivety for not knowing how brutal this training truly is. The villain vows to himself that, starting tomorrow, he will show this scholar what real torment feels like. The next morning, the guards gather around, whispering and chuckling as they wonder if the teacher actually accepted the challenge. One of them grumbles bitterly that the guy stole the clan's lady, while the others eagerly wait for him to show up in the yard. However, their banter comes to a sudden halt when one of the fighters spots the young man walking over. The prota strolls casually toward the group gathered in the training yard, maintaining a perfectly relaxed posture. He politely asks if he happens to be late, but the squad leader assures him he arrived right on time. Seeing the others present, our hero asks who they are, and the leader introduces them as his fellow squad members in the Peng clan. Our hero suggests they get the run started right away, catching the leader off guard with his steady confidence. Looking to break the young man's composure, the leader barks the starting command, and the entire group sets off on the grueling run. A long line of bare-chested warriors runs in sync across the vast estate's stone stairways and open courtyards. The disciples maintain a swift, steady pace, putting their daily physical conditioning on full display. Suddenly, one of the fighters glances back, curious to see if the bookish scholar is already falling behind. Much to everyone's utter bewilderment, the prota keeps pace effortlessly with a calm smile on his face. The leader notices his target is holding up, but smirks, thinking the real test of endurance is about to begin. The villain entertains himself imagining the young man collapsing in exhaustion once they hit the steep mountain trail nearby. As they start ascending the steep dirt slope, the disciples begin gasping for breath from the extreme physical strain. The guards start struggling under the unusual intensity of today's run, desperately wishing someone would tell the leader to slow down. No Il-bong is left completely stunned as the young man breezes past him without breaking a sweat. The leader asks himself in disbelief how this makes any sense, considering his rival is just a weak scholar who reads books all day. He pants heavily in a cold sweat, realizing he has been completely outrun and left behind in humiliating fashion. The villain refuses to accept reality, wondering where a mere bespectacled scholar gets this kind of raw stamina and endurance. Reaching the peak at last, the exhausted guards collapse onto the ground, noticing the squad leader is still pushing forward. Out of sheer spite and frustration over losing, the winded leader turns around and angrily orders another full lap. The guards fall into absolute despair, shouting that the boss has lost his mind, but he yells for quiet and orders them to move. No Ilbong keeps running with great difficulty, gasping for air as he pushes his aching legs to their absolute limit. The brutal laps continue around the property, with the leader repeatedly demanding more physical exertion from the group. Completely drained by the extreme fatigue, one of the guards cannot hold it in and throws up right on the ground. Nearly everyone collapses onto the dirt in exhaustion, while the trembling leader tries to maintain his posture, complaining that the men have gotten soft. The Prota smiles cheerfully, playfully remarking that it is a shame it ended so quickly since he barely worked up a sweat. The young man walks off whistling happily, leaving the fallen guard staring in utter disbelief, wondering what planet he came from. The next day, our hero shows up again with the exact same bright, cheerful smile, sending all the disciples into a panic. In the days that followed, the grueling routine persisted, as the young man made sure to match that insane morning pace every single time. Eventually, the drained and defeated guards tearfully beg the Prota to please stop showing up to their training sessions. Our hero looks puzzled by the plea, while rumors about his unbelievable physical stamina spread like wildfire through the clan. Back home, Yul rests on the table, teasingly recalling how he used to get winded after a short jog, while he laughs it off playfully. Watching Soil enjoy her snacks happily, our hero cheekily explains that he has been getting plenty of running in without her noticing. The young man chuckles and apologizes to his wife, thinking to himself that he has adjusted to clan life far better than he ever anticipated. Our hero reflects that even if some look down on him as a live-in dependent, that means absolutely nothing to him today. The young man remembers that his past self endured far worse suffering and humiliation than petty gossip. Little Soyul hugs her father, complaining that her mother is being mean to her, making our hero realize his real worries have truly melted away. Under the dark night sky, a local resident warmly thanks the young master for the strong protection he provides. The local merchants offer deep, respectful bows, promising they will never forget the valuable support given to the community. Polite as ever, young master Peng Seojin states that listening to the people is the clan's duty, humbly thanking them for their kind words. He bids the merchants a pleasant farewell, reminding them to stay safe on their long walk back home in the dark. The young master chuckles and declines the guard's suggestion to stay the night in the area, cheerfully admitting he overdid things a bit today. He mentions having duties tomorrow, admitting he misses his sweet niece Soyul, who is eagerly waiting for him back home. But suddenly, as they make their way through the dark bamboo forest, the young master halts his steps, turning completely tense. With an intensely serious look, tracking every rustle in the brush, he calls out, asking who is hiding among the trees. Out of nowhere, the metallic sound of blades being drawn echoes through the shadows of the dense bamboo grove. Multiple masked assassins clad in black spring into view, catching the young master and his guard completely off guard. The guard senses the imminent danger, warning tensely that they are completely surrounded by unknown hostiles. A fierce clash of weapons erupts in the shadows, and blood begins splattering against the bamboo trunks. Fighting bravely, the guard shouts for young Master Peng Seojin to flee immediately so he can survive the ambush. Wounded and losing significant blood, the young master runs desperately through the dark forest, trying to escape his attackers. With sharp pain shooting through his injured shoulder, he curses under his breath at the disastrous trap he fell into. He keeps sprinting toward a nearby suspension bridge, with the assassin staying hot on his trail. Peng Seojin realizes in frustration that his relentless pursuers refuse to give up, closing in on the bridge. Suddenly, the young master's eyes widen in dread upon discovering that his escape route has been completely cut off. More assassins drop from above and land on the rope bridge, trapping the wounded youth with nowhere left to turn. He laments deeply in his mind, realizing he picked the worst possible day to make this journey. Looking at the severe wound on his arm, panic sets in as he realizes every exit has been sealed off by the enemy. Suddenly, the young master spots a mysterious silhouette calmly approaching through the forest mist. Peng Seojin tightens his grip on his hilt, wondering if going down fighting is truly his only option left. Out of nowhere, a masked warrior dashes in at blinding speed, unleashing a devastating slash against an assassin. The attackers are left completely stunned and frozen upon seeing their comrades struck down from behind in an instant. The masked warrior moves like lightning, taking down multiple hostiles at once and sending them tumbling off the bridge. Peng Seojin lets out a breath of relief, cracking a slight smile as he watches the enemies dismantled with such speed. A traveler passing through the area noticed the blocked trail and ended up finding a broken, blood-stained blade. The elders argue angrily that the escort guards were taken out, yet the young master's body was nowhere to be found. The clan falls into heated debate, with some demanding they hunt down the culprits, while others worry whether the young master is still alive. Voices rise around the meeting table, but they are quickly reminded that this is not the time for internal bickering. Patriarch Peng Mugang demands immediate silence, ordering every available asset of the clan to focus on finding his son, Seo Jin. In her private quarters, Yule's mother tells her to rest, but the young woman replies with concern that her mother is the one who needs to lie down. The two embrace anxiously, the mother weeping in fear that something terrible and irreversible has happened to her eldest son. Standing quietly in the corner of the room, the prota watches the distress of his wife and mother-in-law over the young man's disappearance. Our hero reflects thoughtfully that this terrible incident with his brother-in-law Seo Jin occurred at this exact same time of year in the past. He remembers that the kidnapping of the clan heir was a massive, widely discussed event across the entire region in his previous life. Our hero recalls with sorrow that his brother-in-law made it back alive back then, but ended up losing an arm, leaving him permanently disabled. Seo Jin was the only relative who treated him with genuine kindness and zero prejudice from day one, leaving deep gratitude in the young man's heart. Clenching his fist, the prota firmly resolves that in this new life, he will rewrite that fate and save his brother-in-law from tragedy. Inside a dark hideout in the woods, heated voices argue over what to do if the young master happens to still be alive. The mercenary leader barks that they should have finished him right from the start, considering the target is the heir to one of the 5 great families. He demands speed from his men, bluntly reminding them that the full payment depends entirely on the mission's absolute success. The hooded assassin replies that his group put their very survival on the line by agreeing to target such a prominent clan. The wealthy client states he never hesitates to spend fortunes on what matters, earning an approving smirk from the hooded mercenary. He gets up to leave, promising to return shortly with fully satisfactory news regarding the young master's fate. The operative runs and leaps effortlessly across rooftops, slipping away silently into the dark night. From atop a nearby hill, the prota watches the assassin's silhouette move away, preparing to tail him without being detected. Inside a deep, gloomy cavern, the captors mock Seo Jin, asking why he insists on clinging to life through so much agony. Tied up and bleeding heavily from his mangled arm, the youth groans in pain, warning that his clan will make every single one of them pay. The hooded executioner brushes off the threat and draws his gleaming blade, preparing to deliver the final strike. But suddenly, a cold, mysterious voice calling for the boss echoes from the shadows, stopping the executioner dead in his tracks. The henchman asks for permission to execute the captive given their losses, and the leader gives a cold nod of approval. Disguised in their dark attire, the prota walks in with measured steps, prompting Seo Jin to yell for him to stay back. In the blink of an eye, the young man uses his dagger to deliver a clean, lethal strike, taking out the executioner right in front of his brother-in-law. He leans in quickly, whispering to the wounded youth that he is an ally and has come solely to get him out safely. With his fingertips glowing with golden energy, our hero urgently states that they must treat the severe arm injury first. He channels his potent healing energy directly into the open wound, halting the youth's bleeding on the spot. Peng Seo Jin is shocked to see his wounded arm giving off a foul, toxic smoke. He realizes he was poisoned, but the masked prota asks him to stay seated and keep his composure for a moment. Our hero starts counting the approaching hostiles, prompting one of the mercenaries to snap, asking what he thinks he is doing. The prota remarks on how many enemies there are, finding it a genuine miracle that his brother-in-law stayed alive this long. One of the mercenaries yells, asking if our hero wants to lose his life, while the prota simply lets out a bored sigh. He finds it ridiculous that they assembled such a massive combat formation against a single person, admitting it is getting on his nerves. Wasting no more time, the prota grips the hilt of his blade tightly, preparing to strike with zero hesitation. He dashes forward at blinding speed, his red eyes glowing intensely in the dark forest. One of the hostiles is left utterly paralyzed upon sensing the terrifying speed of that lethal approach. The prota unleashes a massive whirlwind of slashes that begins tearing through every enemy in range. Screams of agony ring through the woods as the mercenaries are swept up in the devastating combat technique. Another henchman lets out a desperate cry before being completely swallowed by the overwhelming force of the attack. The fierce storm of blood and energy continues shredding the hostiles, leaving them zero opportunity to defend themselves. The power behind the strike is so overwhelming that the bodies of his adversaries are blasted violently through the air. Our hero finally halts his movement, standing tall with his weapon drawn as silence returns to the area. The forest ground is marked by a massive circle of destruction, with fallen foes scattered all around. Peng Xiaojin watches the aftermath in sheer shock, barely able to process that the masked warrior took down nearly everyone in one strike. He wonders in awe what level of martial power is required for someone to pull off such a breathtaking feat. The last surviving mercenary begins shaking in terror, desperately stammering for our hero to wait. He begs for mercy, suggesting they talk things through like civilized people to sort out the situation. But suddenly, an overwhelming force crashes in out of nowhere, slamming into the criminal before he can even finish his plea. The masked Prota watches closely as the dust settles, listening to the defeated opponent groan in agony. A massive, powerful hand clamps down on the last mercenary's neck with effortless ease, choking him on the spot. Patriarch Peng Mugang appears in a fury, holding the man up and stating coldly that he finally found the culprit behind all this. He accuses the group of daring to strike at the Peng clan, while the masked hero watches in complete silence and rising tension. The formidable elder issues a chilling warning, telling the prisoner to brace himself for what is coming. The Prota panics on the inside upon realizing his own father-in-law showed up at this exact awkward moment. He recalls that in his past life, rumors claimed Xiaojin escaped on his own, when in reality it was his father who saved him. Nervous about having his identity exposed, our hero wonders if the smartest move right now is simply to make a quick exit. Peng Mugang supports his injured son, gently telling him to hang in there just a little longer. He stands tall, radiating an intimidating aura, and declares that his father will take care of everything from here on out. The patriarch stomps heavily on the ground, creating a booming shockwave that shatters the surrounding rocks with his massive energy. Without a moment's hesitation, the muscular elder lunges forward at high speed, firing a devastating punch straight at our hero. The Prota's eyes widen in surprise as he swiftly dodges the incoming blow aimed directly at his face. The violent punch whips up a massive wall of dust and wind, demonstrating the patriarch's terrifying physical power. Our hero reflects in astonishment that if this were his past life, that single strike would have certainly finished him. He admits he thought his father-in-law's prowess came purely from swordsmanship, but sees his fist techniques are equally flawless. Peng Mugang keeps up the relentless pursuit with a fierce look in his eyes, readying another crushing strike. The two trade ferocious blows in the middle of the woods, generating massive shockwaves with each clash of power. The patriarch lands heavily on the ground, shouting in genuine surprise that this masked opponent is remarkably strong. He then draws his gleaming sword and challenges our hero, declaring they will see how long he can keep his head on his shoulders. The veteran master takes a heavy, crushing step forward, while our hero breaks into a cold sweat beneath his mask. With eyes blazing bright blue, the patriarch prepares to unleash an exceptionally lethal sword technique. He brings down a massive vertical slash that splits the earth, forcing the Prota to leap back in an evasive maneuver. The energy of the attack levels everything in its path, carving out a huge trench across the battleground. Mid-air, the Prota is amazed by the overwhelming momentum and relentless speed behind his father-in-law's assault. He thinks to himself that had he not trained so diligently, he would have easily been overwhelmed by that colossal force. The patriarch asks irritably if his opponent plans to keep refusing to draw his own blade until the very end of the fight. Raising his mighty weapon, he demands that his adversary stop looking down on the proud name of the Peng clan. A relentless barrage of blue energy slashes begins raining down on the Prota, tearing up the entire surrounding area. A brilliant blue light descends from above straight onto the masked hero, highlighting his silhouette against the rising dust. The Prota keeps his hand firmly gripped on the hilt of his sheathed sword, fighting the urge to draw it against his father-in-law. Locking his focus, our hero tracks the path of the devastating strike with intense, concentrated red eyes. With a swift and incredibly precise motion, he uses his sheathed blade to deflect his opponent's brutal downward slash. A massive cloud of dust billows across the field as both combatants push back following the heavy clash. The veteran warrior is left completely dumbfounded by what he just witnessed, muttering to himself that this should be impossible. He realizes the masked opponent managed to repel his devastating strike using an advanced life energy barrier. The patriarch marvels at such vigor, admitting he has rarely seen anyone possess such profound spiritual energy. Enraged, he demands to know why someone with such immense power would commit such a vile act against his clan. The Prota finds this whole ordeal a massive headache, thinking that sparring with his father-in-law is an honor, just not under these terms. Seeing that his opponent remains completely silent, the elder declares he has no choice but to wrap up the conversation for good. The patriarch raises his glowing blade to deliver the final blow, but a faint, desperate voice shouts for him to stop. Completely taken aback by the sudden interruption, the veteran master freezes his swing and asks what is going on. Ping Seojin stumbles out from among the trees, announcing loudly that the masked man was the one who saved his life. The young heir gestures toward the fallen bodies, confirming that the masked warrior was the one who eliminated all the criminal mercenaries. The patriarch is left completely bewildered by the unexpected revelation, telling his son to wait and explain properly. He inspects one of the fallen bodies up close, realizing the marks were indeed made by the masked fighter's blade. While the father-in-law finally starts piecing the truth together, the masked Prota continues standing there quietly. Suddenly, young Seojin loses his remaining strength and collapses, sending his panicked father rushing straight toward him. While tending to his unconscious son, the veteran master quickly looks back, only to find that the mysterious savior has vanished. The elder shouts into the wind, telling him to wait, offering heartfelt thanks for the massive favor despite not knowing his identity. Deeply impressed, he marvels at the hero's incredible agility, wondering who that formidable warrior could possibly be. Beneath the glow of the crescent moon, the patriarch decides the best course of action is to carry his son straight home. Far from the scene and free of his disguise, the Prota wears a subtle smile, pleased that his plan played out smoothly. He moves swiftly through the forest shadows, heading toward his next objective with complete agility and silence. Nearby, muffled groans of protest begin echoing near a tree where a heavy rope swings back and forth. Our hero walks over calmly, looking at a large sack hanging upside down, with the wealthy mastermind thrashing inside. Using a sharp dagger, the Prota carefully slices through the gag covering the terrified captive's mouth. He pulls the cloth away with a firm tug, finally allowing the man to breathe and speak freely after so long. The man begins screaming in a panic, demanding to know what is happening, claiming he was sound asleep in his room just moments ago. The captive begs for his life, promising to hand over anything in return, prompting our hero to ask with keen interest if he is wealthy. The wealthy man promises to give up his vast fortune, and the Prota coldly agrees, demanding to know where everything is stashed. Seeing the hostage hesitate, our hero gives a slight warning, and the criminal quickly folds, agreeing to tell the whole truth. With the tree branch creaking ominously, the man pleads to be cut down now that he has shared everything he knows. Our hero dryly remarks that the branch seems ready to snap, mentioning he spent the walk over here doing plenty of thinking. He confesses he was debating what the worst possible way to execute him would be to avenge the agony his brother-in-law had to suffer. The villain sneers, claiming it is too late, and that Seojin must already be gone. But our hero reveals he survived with his arm intact. He adds coldly that the villain's own fate has changed as well, leaving the upside-down captive confused and terrified. That prisoner was actually the master of a prominent estate and an exceptionally influential merchant across the continent. He was notorious for being a ruthless individual who committed horrific acts against others simply to amass more and more riches. Our hero states that the man's greatest sin was exploiting and stepping on the weak and righteous to get rich, which is why he devised the ultimate punishment. Realizing the danger, the merchant screams in fury, shouting that this is unfair and that our hero promised to spare him. With a dark gaze, the Prota tells him that the worst end is losing all his wealth and perishing right here amid sheer dread and pain. The villain looks down in absolute horror as he realizes he is suspended directly over a dark abyss filled with old remains. Completely ignoring the desperate screams and pleas for help, the Prota simply turns around and walks away. Seconds later, the wooden branch holding the sack snaps entirely, sending the man plunging down into the abyss. The following morning, the first rays of sunlight illuminate the grand and luxurious main estate of the Ping clan. Resting comfortably in his quarters, the injured youth finally begins regaining consciousness, letting out a soft groan of pain. The entire family gathers around the bedside, letting out collective sighs of relief, seeing that the young man made it and is waking up. With his arm securely bandaged, Seojin sits up gently, asking how everyone in the clan is doing. In his mind, Peng Seojin recalls the moment he was surrounded by multiple masked mercenaries during the ambush. He remembers meeting the masked warrior in the woods while desperately trying to flee with his mangled arm. The young master was completely spent back then, his body covered in blood from the severe combat injuries. Looking at his brother-in-law in the present, the heir feels deeply relieved to see him back home completely safe. The prota sincerely mentions that he is sorry for causing so much worry to him and the rest of the clan. Seo-jin smiles warmly in gratitude, affectionately calling him brother, showing genuine fondness for the young man. However, in the very next second, the youth locks his gaze onto his brother-in-law, sensing something strangely familiar about his presence. A sudden memory of the mysterious masked savior flashes in his mind, causing him to freeze and connect the dots. The prota simply keeps his usual friendly and gentle smile, acting as if he is completely out of the loop. Noticing his sudden pause, he asks with concern if his brother-in-law feels unwell and if they should summon a physician right away. His sister also steps closer with concern, asking if he is all right, and the youth tries to reassure her, saying he feels great. Seo-jin tells himself he must be losing his mind, thinking his gentle scholar brother-in-law could never be that legendary warrior. Our hero continues playing the part of an ordinary, powerless man to perfection, ensuring he does not raise any suspicions. 2 weeks later, a local merchant arrives at the clan and confesses he was hired by the master of the Golden Manor to sabotage Seo-jin. But when the Peng clan warriors march out immediately to settle matters at the Golden Manor, they are met with a huge surprise. The villain's grand manor had already been completely leveled and reduced to ashes by a mysterious assault. On top of that, the master's body was discovered at the bottom of a cliff, and his vast fortune had vanished without a single trace. Though nobody knows who destroyed the estate, the patriarch and his son cannot help but think of the mysterious masked savior. They continue wondering who that formidable warrior truly was and where he might be now after everything that happened. Back to their peaceful daily routine, the prota stands on a balcony, watching his beloved wife Yule stroll gently through the garden. From a distance, our hero's mother-in-law observes the scene quietly with a thoughtful and slightly concerned expression. Inside the clan's main quarters, she speaks with her husband, suggesting he assign their son-in-law an important responsibility. The patriarch asks who she is referring to, and the lady makes it clear she means the only son-in-law they have. The veteran master lets out a mocking laugh, saying the young man is just a freeloader who lounges around doing nothing all day. Taking an elegant sip of tea, she insists that as head of the family, he should guide the young man and give him a straightforward role. The elder thinks for a moment and suggests, with a mischievous grin, giving the young man a tedious chore that nobody else wants to do. The matriarch grows curious seeing her husband's reaction, asking if he finally came up with a good idea to keep the young man busy. Grinning from ear to ear, the patriarch replies with absolute certainty that he has found the perfect job for him. He tells his wife not to worry, mentioning that a specific group of troublemakers should be returning to the clan right about now. Meanwhile, along a peaceful forest road, desperate cries for help begin echoing through the trees. A furious, mean-looking bandit brandishes his weapon, shouting aggressively for the victims to stop lying. The bandit boss demands to know where the Golden Manor's fortune is hidden, accusing the survivors of stashing the coins away. Seeing that the victims have no more valuables on them, he decides to capture everyone and sell them into forced labor on the black market. But suddenly, young warriors drop down from the treetops, striking the henchmen violently with surprise kicks and swift attacks. The bandit leader is left completely disoriented by the sudden ambush, looking around in shock to figure out who they are. One of the newcomers flashes a smug grin, coldly announcing that the party is officially over for these crooks. Several young swordsmen in sharp blue robes encircle the area, ready to teach the wrongdoers a harsh lesson. The henchmen begin backing away in fear, shouting nervously for the intruders to back off and stay out of their business. One of the fighters mocks the criminals' cowardly reaction, casually teasing that they are making way too much noise. In a fraction of a second, the youths leap into action, taking down the bandits one by one with remarkable agility. One of the wilder fighters in the crew lets out a playful laugh as he wraps up another opponent with zero effort. The criminal boss trembles in terror, seeing his men drop so quickly, calling the youths ruthless slaughterers. Panicking, he tries to rally his few remaining men, yelling that they still hold the numerical advantage to win this. Before he can even finish his sentence, the bandit is instantly silenced by a clean, swift strike that floors him. The youth smirks sarcastically, remarking that he feels insulted being compared to such weak, incompetent crooks. The group's leader tells them to stay focused and keep their impulses in check, reminding them they are scaring the innocent civilians. While the boys offer sheepish apologies, a sneaky bandit takes advantage of the distraction to grab a young woman as a hostage. He presses a sharp blade against the trembling woman's throat, screaming in terror and begging for his own life to be spared. Suddenly, a pair of chopsticks flies through the air at high speed, striking the captor's forehead with pinpoint accuracy. The criminal drops down instantly, freeing the hostage, who lets out a startled gasp at the sudden turn of events. A young female warrior from the group watches from a tree branch above, remarking that they only ever mess around. The squad leader lets out a tired sigh, but quickly commends his comrades for doing a solid job taking down all the bandits. He tries to put the victims at ease, telling them they are safe now, yet the merchants stay on their knees pleading for their lives. The young warrior looks puzzled by their panicked reaction, not understanding why they are still so terrified. The big guy in the crew laughs heartily, joking that they honestly look more like terrifying outlaws than a rescue squad. Realizing their mistake, the merchants quickly apologize, explaining they had no intention of offending the young fighters. A merchant spots the white wolf emblem embroidered on their robes, wondering if they belong to the clan's elite force. He is astonished to realize he is standing before the legendary White Wolf unit, one of the most famous squads in the entire region. Relieved, the travelers offer their deepest gratitude, while the big warrior patiently tells them to stay safe on the road. The leader claps his hands, suggesting they head back to base before the elders start complaining about how long they took. But suddenly, one of the fighters remembers an important detail that had completely slipped their minds until now. They start grumbling about not being able to grab a drink after the victory, remembering they were grounded for roughing up an elder's son. The leader tells them all to zip it and keep their composure, but quickly spots a familiar figure waiting by the entrance of their residence. The younger recruits look on with curiosity, noticing an unfamiliar man standing right in front of their main gate. One of the fighters calls out loudly, asking who is there and demanding the stranger identify himself right away. The prota turns around calmly with a gentle smile, remarking that he figured they would not be home at this hour. The younger boys crowd around our hero, sniffing him inquisitively, noting his handsome face while commenting on a familiar scent. Having zero patience for their antics, the squad leader grabs the curious boys by the head and pulls them back immediately. The commander apologizes for his teammates' rude behavior, and the prota simply smiles, saying it is completely fine. Our hero calmly reveals he was sent personally by the clan patriarch himself to handle a matter of great importance. The boys find it strange that they have never seen the young man around the clan before, and the prota smoothly explains he joined the family very recently. The squad commander eyes our hero with slight suspicion for a brief second, suggesting they head inside the house to speak properly. Inside the cozy residence, the prota takes a seat politely, waiting patiently for the meeting to begin. He places his teacup gently onto the wooden table, preparing to lay out the details of the mission for the group. The towering Gutai-san steps forward with a firm stance, apologizes for the delay, and proudly introduces himself as a member of the special unit. Our hero introduces himself as Yeo Woon-hui, saying it is a pleasure to meet them, prompting the muscular warrior to ask about the purpose of the visit. With an intriguing smile, the prota reveals without hesitation that the clan patriarch himself has issued a direct combat order. The burly fighter straightens up instantly, asking with keen interest what kind of order the head of the family sent over. The prota clasps his hands elegantly, firmly declaring that starting today, he will be taking over as the new supreme commander of the squad. A short while later, the group arrives outside the imposing enemy stronghold, and our hero remarks in surprise that the place was closer than he thought. The enemy sentries atop the wooden palisades spot the group approaching, shouting in alarm to demand who the intruders are. Paying no heed to the guards' warnings, the squad's new commander ignores the threats and immediately orders his young subordinates to charge. The younger boys draw their blades and sprint forward with terrifying speed, enthusiastically yelling to leave the frontline enemies to them. Right behind them, the mighty Gu Taisan charges forward with heavy earth-shaking strides, making the ground rumble beneath his raw strength. The agile youths use the big man's shoulders as a launching pad to leap even higher, pulling off a flawless coordinated aerial assault. He lets out a thunderous battle roar that reverberates across the stronghold, unleashing devastating blows upon the defenders. With manic laughter and blinding slashes, the two younger fighters slice through the enemy defenses with lethal coordination. The fortress henchmen are blasted violently through the air under the overwhelming momentum of the elite unit's strike. Watching the battle with complete composure, our hero calmly tells the rest of his comrades to get ready to move. With a massive crash, the fortress's heavy wooden gates are split wide open by the sheer destructive force of the youth's attack. The twins burst in, kicking down everything in their path, shattering barricades and leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. With a wild, thrilled look in his eyes, one of them yells for everyone to push forward and begin a complete sweep of the enemy base. Panic spreads rapidly among the defenders, who begin fleeing and screaming in despair against the relentless assault. The prota strolls casually through the chaos, admiring the seamless teamwork of these seasoned fighters who have survived countless battles. Locking his focus on the center courtyard, he thoughtfully considers that this overwhelming clash is merely the opening act of a much greater challenge. A massive weapon slams into the ground with tremendous force, as a furious voice bellows, demanding to know how they dare storm his stronghold like this. The formidable fortress leader, Zhu Guangdou, steps out wielding a colossal battle axe, angrily asking if the intruders have a death wish. Gu Taesan simply flashes an arrogant smirk, mocking the enemy boss by remarking that this petty bandit sure talks a big game. The enemy boss demands to know who this pest is, and the clan's powerhouse coldly replies that he is simply the man who is going to end him. Infuriated by his opponent's nerve, the fearsome villain roars in anger, declaring that he has never once lost a contest of raw strength in his entire life. The bandit chief charges furiously, swinging his colossal axe, while Gu Taesan just smirks, remarking that it must be his lucky day. He arrogantly mocks the villain, declaring with complete confidence that he has never lost a contest of raw strength in his entire life. Zhu Guangdou slams his axe into the ground with overwhelming power, unleashing a massive shockwave that shatters the surrounding boulders to pieces. The bandit panics when his opponent vanishes into thin air, only for Taesan to reappear right behind him, teasing how hopelessly slow he is. He openly taunts the enemy leader, asking with utter disdain if swinging wildly with brute force is really his only trick. Furious at being humiliated like that, the criminal spins around and snaps, calling the clan warrior a total coward. The two powerhouses trade devastating blows, creating a massive impact that shakes the entire area to its core. The bandit realizes in frustration that his opponent is intentionally blocking at the very last second just to clown on him and tear down his pride. Gu Taesan effortlessly dodges and jokes that a turtle could probably throw hands faster than that. Blinded by rage from the relentless teasing, the villain gathers all his dark aura and threatens to grant the young man an early exit. The criminal's muscular frame expands unnaturally as he channels his dark energy to unleash a finishing blow. He unleashes a devastating strike that creates a giant vortex of purple destruction, blowing away everything in its path throughout the stronghold. Even in the eye of that chaotic storm of dust and wind, Gu Taesan remains totally unfazed, casually pointing out how weak the attack really is. With effortless control, Taesan's heavy blade completely halts the massive axe strike without giving up even a single millimeter of ground. Right after, the clan's heavyweight lands a crushing punch square on the villain's face, shattering his weapon and breaking his stance for good. The criminal stumbles backward, battered and bruised, screaming in sheer agony from the monstrous impact of that single hit. Taesan coldly steps forward with his sword raised to wrap things up, while the fallen villain desperately begs him to stop. Showing zero mercy to the ruthless killer, the warrior tells him to shut his mouth and delivers a clean, downward slash. Crimson splashes across the air, leaving the few surviving henchmen in pure shock and total panic. The proto walks over and praises his subordinate's clean work, while the big guy rests his blade on his shoulder and humbly shrugs it off. Surprisingly still breathing on his knees, the defeated fortress chief menacingly mutters that they are all just foolish fools. Taesan finds it bizarre that the beaten man is chuckling, while the villain gives an ominous warning that the young fighters just walked into a trap. Suddenly, a dangerous spark of red energy begins to flicker from the criminal's trembling hand as he lies on the stronghold floor. The man mutters his final words, swearing that every single one of them will deeply regret ever setting foot in this place. He finally collapses to the ground without any strength left and breathes his last, while the Prota and his crew look on with suspicion. The commander loudly announces that their leader is down and orders the rest of the bandits to drop their weapons and surrender right now. The Prota also demands their surrender, but senses that something feels off, wondering if the villain left behind a hidden curse or a trap. His eyes narrow slightly as he quickly glances back after picking up a suspicious noise coming from another direction. In the distance, some of the captured prisoners start screaming hysterically, panicking that their time is running out. The squad commander gets annoyed by the chaos and shouts, asking if all the outlaws have completely lost their minds out of nowhere. But before he can even finish his sentence, the young commander is abruptly cut off as he senses a terrifying danger descending from above. A relentless barrage of giant arrows begins to rain down from the sky at high speed, hammering the central courtyard where they stand. The devastating impact of the projectiles causes massive blasts, kicking up dense clouds of dust across the bandit stronghold. The Prota and the squad commander look at the fallen projectiles with serious expressions, wondering where that surprise attack even came from. Through the slowly clearing smoke, a mysterious and imposing silhouette emerges, walking forward with a calm and chilling aura. The young warriors and the Prota lock eyes with the figure, revealing a distinguished gray-haired elder looking down on them with total superiority. The old master sports a striking red mark near his right eye and disdainfully asks who dared to disturb his precious beauty sleep in the base. The Prota is surprised by the Elder's incredible speed and immediately begins analyzing every feature of this formidable opponent. He takes close note of the reddish mark near the old man's eye and starts suspecting that he might be a legendary, high-threat martial artist. Unaware of the true danger, Gu Taisan steps toward the Elder to question him, but the commander frantically yells for him to back away immediately. The clan's powerhouse looks back in confusion, not understanding the warning, while the old master raises his hands to prep an attack. With blinding speed, the Elder unleashes a devastating palm strike that slams into Taisan's face with monstrous energy. The colossal impact unleashes a massive wave of destructive power, launching the clan warrior far back and triggering a huge blast. He crashes hard onto the ground, scorched and badly injured, coughing up a trail of blood from the sheer force of that single blow. The Elder mocks him, claiming he intended to finish him in one shot, but sarcastically praises his durability, which infuriates the big guy. Seeing their comrade get taken down so brutally, the two agile twins draw their weapons and charge head-on to pay him back. The veteran warrior dodges with effortless grace, genuinely amused by the two boys' desperate and rushed assault. He flashes a sinister smirk, clearly having the time of his life watching their clumsy attempt at a counterattack. In a split second, he strikes the twins' chests with two relentless energy palms, completely shattering their defenses. The boys are sent flying while spitting blood, as the dangerous Elder laughs out loud, mocking their lack of real combat power. The old man slowly walks toward the downed youths and arrogantly asks them to try entertaining him just a little bit more. The squad commander watches the opponent with deep concern, realizing that the Elder's power level is completely off the charts. He gulps nervously, coming to the chilling realization that his worst suspicions about the old man's identity were spot on. That man is pure evil personified, infamous in the past as the terrifying demon of extreme evil. He is a legendary archdemon who spread terror across the realm and stained the continent with chaos decades ago. Being an unprecedented, cruel villain who took pleasure in others' suffering, he became public enemy number one. However, after taking down the young daughter of the Namgung clan and the Alliance leader's brother, he completely vanished off the grid. The commander never imagined such a historical monster would show up here, and he frantically checks if the twins are still breathing. Battered and trembling from the pain, the boys barely managed to reply that they just barely made it through. Realizing the sheer gravity of this desperate situation, the squad leader silently curses his terrible luck. He feels relieved that his teammates managed to hang on after taking those devastating blows. But he knows all too well that their bodies are completely broken, and they are in no shape to keep fighting. The old man cackles mockingly, saying he is in a great mood seeing fresh playthings walk right into his hands. The surviving bandits tremble in horror, whispering that this crazy old man is an unhinged monster who will take out everyone here. In absolute panic, the henchmen start sprinting for their lives to get out before things go south. The Elder tracks their escape with his eyes and jokingly asks where they think they are going after spending so much quality time together. He extends his weathered hand and fires consecutive blasts of pure dark energy right at the backs of the helpless runners. A series of violent bursts hits the bandits' backs with pinpoint accuracy, taking them out with zero chance to defend themselves. As cries of pain echo out, the old man lets out a manic laugh, stating that the screams of those bugs are pure music to his ears. He coldly declares that the useless ants are dealt with, announcing that it is finally time to hear the clan's watchdogs bark. Wounded and covered in red, Gu Taisan completely loses his temper upon hearing the horrific Elder's cheap taunt. He charges recklessly, shouting that he will take down the old man for disrespecting the squad, while his leader tries to hold him back in vain. The Elder merely watches the desperate charge with disdain, sarcastically remarking that there really was a big dog in the pack. With a simple wave, the old man releases a wave of crushing force to test if the warrior's massive size is actually good for anything. The big guy manages to endure the initial shock and keeps pushing forward with pure rage, shouting insults at the maniac. Ignoring the threat, the villain charges a dense sphere of power while the young warrior vows to tear him apart piece by piece. With a surgical strike, the Elder hits the clan warrior's arm with devastating force, snapping the bone on the spot. The giant drops down with a deafening yell of agony, while the leader rushes to help and the old man laughs at his misery. The demon of extreme evil glares at the group with a dark gaze, revealing that he just changed his mind about what to do with them. He sadistically warns that he now plans to break them down very slowly over 3 whole days, confessing he can hardly wait. The squad commander points his blade with resolve and shouts the unit's name, declaring he will never allow such madness to happen. He firmly orders the squad into combat formation, and all the warriors take their battle positions surrounding the old man. But the dangerous elder only offers a mocking smirk, coldly muttering that it is far too late for any formation to work. He tells them to consider it a high honor to witness his true hidden power before they scream in fear at their demise. Right after, the old man executes one of his deadliest dark arts, hurling multiple explosive spheres in every direction. One of the young squad members freezes in sheer terror as he senses the overwhelming destructive force behind that fatal strike. The attack moves so fast that the members of the White Wolf unit get hit mercilessly before they can even put up a guard. A massive beam of destructive purple energy erupts from the center of the base, swallowing the entire combat zone in a massive blast. Total silence falls over the area as all the warriors lie battered across the courtyard under the triumphant gaze of that ancient monster. The dangerous elder laughs hysterically at the tragic sight, while one of the surviving youngsters weakly curses from the ground. The Prota, who managed to dodge the blast completely unharmed, grimly realizes the gap in power between them is massive. The villain points at the Prota with a smirk, asking if he wants to get on his knees and beg for mercy before meeting his end. But the Prota simply steps forward with a calm face, announcing that he will take over the fight from here and telling the leader to fall back. The squad commander stares at the Prota in shock, relieved to see that his new superior did not run away like a coward. The elder finds that calm attitude strange and demands to know who he is, prompting the Prota to introduce himself as the official commander of this unit. The old man mocks him, saying the Prota hid like a scared mouse the whole time, and certainly does not look like he has the strength of a leader. He disdainfully concludes that the kid is just an extra trying to play the hero, since he cannot sense a single drop of energy coming from him. The Prota asks if the villain would actually spare their lives if he begged, to which the old man jokingly replies that it depends on what he has to offer. Desperate, the commander shouts a warning, telling the Prota not to be fooled by a demon who has ended more than 10,000 innocent souls. The villain casually cleans his ear, feigning boredom, and asks if the kid has anything of real value to trade, to which the Prota replies that he definitely does. With his eyes glowing a sharp red, the Prota calmly promises that he will make the villain's final moments a lot less painful. The squad commander stares at the Prota in total disbelief, unable to wrap his head around such boldness coming from a humble scholar. Even the veteran archdemon is momentarily stunned by the audacious promise, asking the young man to repeat what he just said. The old man asks if the kid is messing with him, and the Prota casually replies that he is just genuinely looking out for his well-being. The villain clenches his fists in fury, thinking this young man must be completely out of his mind to mock him without showing an ounce of fear. Totally blinded by rage, the old master unleashes his dark energy and roars that the Prota must have a death wish. Wasting no more time on words, he throws a punch wrapped in a massive sphere of destructive force straight at the young man. Another barrage of pure, devastating purple energy rains down on the area, aiming to wipe the Prota off the map once and for all. But with unmatched agility, the Prota simply closes his eyes and glides past every single lethal shot with total ease. The old man is dumbfounded, barely able to process that the kid dodged his ultimate technique right in the middle of a conversation. He roars in fury, claiming that such a thing should be completely impossible, refusing to accept the reality right in front of him. Driven mad by anger, the villain hurls dozens of new deadly energy orbs with all his might, swearing to finish him at any cost. The Prota just stares back coldly, acting as if those terrifying blasts were nothing more than a gentle breeze. Seeing the storm of dark power close in on the young man, the squad commander desperately cries out for his new superior. But his look of panic instantly turns into pure shock when he witnesses what goes down right after. The Prota makes a swift motion and unleashes a massive slash of golden energy that effortlessly cleaves through the sky. His divine strike completely shatters and cancels out all of the old man's dark orbs, creating a spectacular shockwave. The Prota smiles, his red eyes glowing, and asks where the old man learned such poor manners, making so much noise while someone is talking. An overwhelming wave of golden light slams into the archdemon, knocking him backward with devastating force. He is left speechless, seeing the young man flawlessly replicate his secret art, a feat not even the 12 venerables could copy so easily. Heavily bruised, Gutai-san asks his buddy if he just saw that crazy move, and the other confirms it in absolute shock. The villain trembles with rage upon realizing his high-speed secret art was mastered in an instant by a mere kid. He wonders in disbelief what kind of monster the young lady of the Ping clan brought home when she decided to marry this man. It becomes crystal clear to everyone present that this calm, mild-mannered scholar is definitely way more than just a harmless bookworm. The commander feels deep regret for ever testing the Prota in the past, while the old man loudly demands to know his true identity. The Prota casually claims to be just a regular member of the Pung clan, but the elder refuses to believe that family could ever produce such a freak. The Prota smirks, asking if he really looks down on the Peng clan that much, and warns him that the game is about to change from here on out. He proudly declares that the Peng clan will become the greatest and most powerful family under the heavens, prompting the old master to laugh mockingly. The elder lets out an unhinged cackle at the young man's bold claim, while the rest of the squad watches the exchange in stunned silence. He sarcastically agrees that they might pull it off, but swears he will completely erase them with his own 2 hands first. The archdemon reveals he possesses an even greater hidden power and tells the young man to feel honored to witness it for the first time. The injured youngsters watch the scene in absolute terror, trembling as they feel the massive volume of dark energy gathering in the air. But the Prota merely keeps his gentle, confident smile on his face, showing that he remains completely unbothered by this show of force. The villain activates the ultimate form of his secret corrupted blood art, sadistically warning that the Prota will regret ever laying eyes on it. With his body fully transformed into a massive, terrifying beast, the demon of extreme evil takes an imposing combat stance. The wounded squad members look at the Prota in panic, wondering why he is just standing there doing nothing against that monster. One of the surviving twins nervously looks over at his brother, asking if he has any bright ideas on how they can make it out alive. But before they can come up with a game plan, a devastating crescent of crimson energy catches the boys off guard with extreme force. The shockwave is so overwhelming that the White Wolf unit members get blown away, spitting blood under the sheer impact of the hit. The squad commander groans in pain, coughing heavily due to the severe internal injuries caused by the villain's technique. The horrific elder effortlessly grabs one of the injured boys by the throat, cruelly ordering the trash to keep his mouth shut. He glares at the Prota mockingly, noting that the young man did not take a single step to protect his subordinate, asking where his courage went. The archdemon teasingly asks if he finally froze up in fear, but the Prota casually replies that such a thing is definitely not the case. Locking his gaze with absolute seriousness, the Prota reveals that there was simply zero need for him to move from his spot to defend anyone. The Prota dismissively claims that the boy can easily handle weak attacks of that level on his own, making the old master pause in hesitation. Irritated by the young man's calm arrogance, the villain venomously whispers that he will make him pay dearly for those cheeky words. Raising his transformed hand, he sadistically swears to drill holes through the Prota's body until he turns him into a human flute. The elder slams the ground with massive force, targeting the Prota's vital pressure points while taunting him about where he wants to take the hit. He aims directly for the young man's energy centers, but the Prota easily dodges every incoming strike behind his agile blue spirit shield. The Prota glides through the air with effortless grace, smoothly pointing out that the loudest and most annoying noisemaker in the entire base is the old man himself. The veteran warrior snaps, calling the Prota a cowardly lightweight whose only trick is dodging and running away from real strikes. Right after, he sadistically warns that he is going to make sure the Prota has nowhere left to run inside the fortress. He focuses an immense amount of dark energy into his fist, furious that the kid dares to act so smug right in front of him. The demon of extreme evil wildly vows to tear him to shreds and scatter his remains across the entire continent. He unleashes a relentless, devastating flurry of dark energy punches at the young man, aiming to crush him without mercy. The colossal onslaught tears the surroundings apart, setting off a chain of violent explosions and shockwaves that shake the stronghold's foundations. The terrifying elder smiles in satisfaction as he looks over the massive destruction left in the courtyard, assuming the fight is finally wrapped up. He proudly remarks that the opponent was worthy enough to make him tap into this much power, adding that he deserves praise before checking out. The villain brags about possessing absolute strength, capable of blowing away any standard warrior with just a single breath of spiritual energy. He arrogantly claims that this is his supreme, ultimate martial art, one that he has never shown to another living soul. The concentrated destructive force forms a colossal pillar of purple light that cracks the ground and crashes right over the combat zone. The stronghold courtyard is left riddled with deep craters and heavy smoke, leading the elder to believe the Prota was wiped out completely. But in the blink of an eye, the Prota impossibly appears right behind the old master without a single scratch on his clothes. He calmly gets the elder's attention, asking with a cold stare if this was really the first time he ever fought with his full power unchained. The demon of extreme evil's eyes widen in terror as a chilling shiver runs down his spine from the young man's intimidating aura. Overwhelmed by panic and pure rage, the villain whips around and throws a blind punch at the Prota, screaming curses. The Prota easily dodges and remarks that the old man only ever picked off weaklings in the past, which is why he delusionally thought he was hot stuff. The Prota adds that the old man should be embarrassed to call himself a supreme demon with such mediocre output, driving his rival crazy with anger. Showing his open hand with complete chill, the Prota mocks how easily the opponent loses his cool over just a few simple words. Without hesitation, he drives a devastating palm strike directly into the elder's chest, instantly breaking his guard with brutal impact. The villain is sent flying while coughing up a heavy amount of blood, struggling to speak and unable to grasp where that blinding speed came from. The Prota just looks down on him with disdain, coldly declaring that the elder is nothing more than a weak and noisy washed-up fighter. The old man grinds his teeth in sheer rage at being called weak and insignificant by a kid he considered a total nobody. Blinded by hatred, the archdemon releases an absurd surge of blood energy, roaring a promise to tear the Prota apart before the day ends. The young squad members watch the scene in utter shock, terrified by the sheer scale of the monstrous power the elder is putting on display. The demon of extreme evil takes his final attack stance, warning with a dark grin that it is way too late to beg for mercy now. Activating the peak stage of his forbidden blood art, the villain laughs, challenging the Prota to keep that smile on his face after seeing this. The boys wonder in awe if this is the true might of an archdemon, unable to understand how the Prota can face it without even blinking. The Prota simply observes the monstrous display of power with total serenity, acting as though everything is well within his calculations. The Prota realizes this fight has escalated way too far for his subordinates, deciding it is best to wrap things up quickly with his own hands. The elder roars as he charges forward at extreme speed, asking if the young man wants to beg him to hold back on the final blow. The villain's dark aura is so overwhelming that it cracks the stronghold's stone floor, making debris float under the sheer weight of his energy. The demon of extreme evil roars in fury and launches his most powerful punch straight at the Prota's head without holding back. The monstrous punch produces a deafening roar and a colossal burst of crimson energy that completely tears apart the fortress courtyard. But the Prota glides past the punch with zero effort, making the old man huff in anger and scream that all he does is run like a coward. The Prota looks at him with calm disdain, while the frustrated villain demands to know how he has the nerve to talk big without making a move. The destructive shockwave from the old man's attack ends up toppling a nearby wooden guard tower, burying some of his own henchmen. The elder laughs like a madman at the collateral damage, cheering on the victims to scream even louder in their agony. The Prota politely interrupts the old man's unhinged celebration, coldly apologizing for having to spoil his fun. He appears midair right above the elder, mentioning that he felt bad for his clumsy fist techniques and wanted to teach him a proper lesson. The Prota locks his gaze with total focus, coldly stating that he has also grown pretty bored of this underwhelming skirmish. With blinding speed, he drives a devastating palm strike directly down onto the villain's head with full force. The colossal impact slams the demon of extreme evil into the fortress stone floor, carving out a massive crater of destruction. The Prota lands softly while the villain, coughing up blood inside the crater, furiously demands to know who gave him permission to end the fight. Clutching his battered head in intense pain, the archdemon screams in desperation, swearing that he will take the young man down no matter what. The villain realizes he has to put everything on the line, burning all his stored dark energy to have any hope of taking down this young opponent. He cackles, saying he does not care if his own body breaks down, as long as he gets to fire off his ultimate final destructive technique. The elder fires a massive beam of concentrated crimson energy straight at the Prota's chest with pure homicidal frenzy. Seeing the rapid approach of that desperate last-ditch strike, the Prota lets out a chillingly dark smirk. He coldly states that fighting the elder was a complete waste of time, adding that his final attack will meet the exact same pathetic end. Yo Wun-hui charges his glowing hand and remarks that the opponent's final move means absolutely nothing to him. The young man activates his legendary heavenly divine martial art, causing his eyes to blaze with overwhelming, intimidating power. He unleashes the mighty demon-shattering palm technique, blasting a crushing wave of brilliant golden energy right at the villain. The colossal impact of the attack unleashes a thundering boom that rips through the ground, completely swallowing the terrifying elder. The demon of extreme evil panics completely as his form gets wiped out, desperately screaming that this cannot be happening. The villain feels his body coming apart before that absurd level of power, letting out a final, horrified gasp of disbelief. A massive pillar of golden light shoots straight up into the sky while the archdemon's fading cry echoes across the entire valley. When the dust finally clears, the lifeless, battered form of the villain remains kneeling on the ruined ground. The face of the once legendary demon is now completely still, drained of any remaining energy or life force. The warriors of the White Wolf unit watch everything in total disbelief, barely able to process that the horrific monster has finally been taken down. With the intense battle finally wrapped up, Yo Woon Hui casually begins walking back toward his subordinates. He approaches the boys of the White Wolf unit and calmly asks if everyone is holding up all right after the clash. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to a serene, picturesque garden featuring a peaceful lotus pond within the Peng clan estate. Young Yule stands quietly on the wooden bridge, looking out at the scenery with a deeply worried and thoughtful expression. Her mother gently walks up behind her, affectionately noting that she seems to be carrying a heavy weight of worry on her shoulders. Yule turns around to greet her, while her mother points out that the breeze is turning chilly, suggesting they head inside the house. The young woman vents, explaining that her husband has been sleeping out in the freezing wind for days on end because of the mission. She adds that while the hardened Peng clan warriors might be used to the harsh cold, her husband is built completely differently. Yule remembers that until very recently, her beloved husband was just a humble school teacher instructing young village kids. She lowers her head in sadness, thinking about the tough hardships he must be facing now that he has taken up the commander post. Suddenly, rapid footsteps echo from afar as someone loudly calls out for their big sister across the courtyard. Young Peng Seo-jin comes running toward them out of breath, shouting for his mother, who asks what all the sudden fuss is about. He breathlessly reveals that the White Wolf unit has returned, and that they actually managed to defeat the terrifying demon of extreme evil. The squad makes a triumphant return to the clan led by Yeo Woon Hui, with Gu Tai-san carrying the defeated villain's trophy. The clan members stare at the monster's remains in sheer disbelief, wondering if the squad was genuinely capable of taking down such a threat. People buzz with admiration over the team's strength, while wondering if that humble teacher actually managed to come back in one piece. One of them suspiciously questions whether the guy was just dead weight who dragged the rest of the unit down the whole time. At that moment, Yeo Woon Hui spots his beloved family joyfully walking toward him across the clan courtyard. Yule calls out to her husband with a glowing smile, while little Soyul cheers happily, seeing that her daddy is finally back. The prota cannot hide his relief, breaking into a warm, gentle smile as he reunites with his wife and young daughter. He looks at them with pure affection and softly says that he is finally back home after that long ordeal. Later on, one of the elders informs the squad that they will soon have an audience with the Grand Patriarch of the Peng clan. He explains that the leader is thrilled about the archdemon's defeat and suggests they use this chance to score some serious points with him. But Gu Tai-san clenches his fist in discomfort and calls out to the commander in a dead serious tone. He states that he cannot accept the White Wolf unit taking all the credit for eliminating such a dangerous threat. The warrior insists that they did not beat that monster and that they would have been mere playthings if Yeo Woon Hui had not stepped in. Another squad mate agrees, pointing out that it was the commander himself who took on the demon single-handedly and finished the job. He hands the trophy over to Yeo Woon Hui, making it crystal clear that the team has zero intention of stealing his spotlight. All the subordinates bow with deep respect, pleading with the commander to tell the patriarch the full, honest truth. Yeo Woon Hui just smirks casually, pointing out that they are all way too honest and by the book for their own good. He tells them the matter is settled, as he hates the thought of having his true power exposed and dealing with all the annoying headaches that follow. Gu Tai-san is completely floored, asking if even the clan patriarch himself has no clue about the commander's real strength. Yeo Woon Hui confirms the leader does not know, adding that his brother-in-law Peng Seo-jin is completely in the dark as well. The subordinate gets curious and asks why he chose to reveal his monstrous power specifically during this mission. The young man glances back, explaining that since he just became their commander, he could not just stand by and watch his men get taken out. He asks them once more not to credit him with the win, since it would be way too exhausting if the truth about his power came to light. Hearing that, one of the twins raises his hand with a funny question about what happens next with this little cover-up. He asks what they should do if other powerhouse villains show up to challenge the White Wolf unit just to test their hype. Yeo Woon Hui chuckles and says he will just turn them into target practice in a flash, leaving his men stunned by how casually cold he is. He puts on a confident smile and closes the topic, thinking that as long as it works out for him in the end, everything is golden. Before entering the hall, Gu Tai-san calls the squad to attention, ordering everyone to get their game faces on for what comes next. He reminds them that the moment they step through those doors, they will be hailed as the heroes who took down the archdemon, and everyone nods. Yeo Woon Hui flashes a confident grin and smoothly tells them that with that settled, they are good to head inside. The massive double doors of the clan's main hall slowly swing open to welcome the triumphant return of the warriors. Patriarch Peng Mugang greets them from his throne, playfully commenting that those troublemakers actually pulled off a legendary feat. Yo Wunhui steps forward, bows respectfully, and sincerely thanks the patriarch for his kind words. Peng Mugang laughs, saying he is in fantastic spirits, while one of the elders thinks it is only natural for the patriarch to give them such a warm welcome. The elder reflects on how the archdemon was a menace that even the martial alliance failed to capture, even while knowing he was already injured. He knows full well that even in a weakened state, the dreaded demon of extreme evil was likely still on par with the patriarch himself. To think that a legendary, terrifying powerhouse of that caliber met his end in such a decisive fashion. The elder looks at Yo Wunhui with suspicion, recalling that the official report names the young man as the one who brought the villain down. Meanwhile, Gu Taisan thinks to himself how badly he wants to spill the beans and give the real credit to his commander. Peng Dewan's father watches the scene from the corner with a calculating gaze, clearly cooking up some hidden motives. He decides to step forward, respectfully asking the patriarch for permission to say a few words to the room. He notes that the White Wolf unit's name will soon echo across the entire Murim, bringing in invitations from every corner of the realm. The patriarch agrees with the logic, admitting that taking down a horrific monster like that is bound to cause a massive buzz. The elder puts on a fake smile and says that is wonderful news, but quickly adds that he has one major concern about the situation. He openly questions whether the current squad commander is truly capable of handling matters of such high importance for the clan. The man asks the patriarch not to take it the wrong way, slickly claiming he has no intention of looking down on his son-in-law. He carries on with his pitch, claiming that leading the White Wolf unit must be far too heavy a burden for the young commander. The elder asks the patriarch to recognize his loyalty, claiming he just wants to spare the young man from such an exhausting and complicated role. Peng Mugang finds the angle amusing and asks if he already has someone else in mind to take over the squad's leadership. The man fakes modesty, suggesting that his own son, Peng Dohuan, seems like the most fitting and qualified pick for the job. The patriarch brings up that he offered that before and was turned down, but the elder justifies it by saying he felt his son was not ready back then. Peng Mugang asks if the kid is ready now, and the father confidently assures him that in his eyes, his son is more than ready. Hearing the sheer nerve of trying to strip Yeo Wunhui of his leadership, Gu Taisan gets furious and tries to step in right then and there. But Yeo Wunhui quickly puts out an arm to stop his subordinate from speaking, calming him down with a firm gesture. Gu Taisan backs off, still boiling over the elder's audacity, while the patriarch quietly observes the whole dynamic. Peng Mugang admits Do Wan has the credentials, but notes that he first needs to hear what the unit's own members have to say. The patriarch looks straight at the squad and loudly asks what the White Wolf unit warriors think about the proposal. He mentions knowing that the warriors were not big fans of their new commander back when he was first appointed to the post. The clan leader bluntly asks if the squad wants to welcome a brand new leader to replace the current one. In a flawless display of unity, every single member steps forward together in a firm and imposing stance. Gu Taisan declares with absolute conviction that the commander of the White Wolf unit is, and always will be, their current boss. Meanwhile, in another room, Peng Do-wan lets out an amused chuckle, asking his father if he found that whole scene funny. The father grumbles that the soldiers openly rejected him in front of everyone, but the young man notes that they did not have much of a choice. Do-wan points out that the group just got off probation and was not about to risk angering the patriarch and his daughter by backing someone else. The young master thanks his dad for backing him, but admits he found the soldiers' choice of words pretty weird. He suspiciously recalls Gu Taesan's declaration in the hall, doubling down on their absolute loyalty to the current squad commander. He remembers the warriors firmly stating that they want to keep serving under his command, calling it the unanimous will of the squad. Do-wan finds it strange that the group would go so hard defending a leader who was previously written off as just a weak scholar. The father agrees, noting that the vibe around them has shifted entirely, looking like they finally found their true backbone. The elder says it will be impossible to make them turn on their leader now, meaning they will have to find a way to make him step down on his own. When asked about the plan, the father says he wants to test if the foundation holding the White Wolf unit together is actually solid. Peng Do-wan flashes a wicked smile and darkly suggests they give the squad's structure a little shake to see what breaks. Elsewhere, little Soil peeks shyly from behind a wooden door with an adorable, curious look on her face. She breaks into a wide smile and happily sprints toward her dad, cheering with joy to see him back home. Yeo Wunhui warmly scoops her up in his arms, asking if she was a good girl while he was away, getting a sweet response. The little girl happily snuggles into her father's shoulder as he hugs her tight, feeling pure peace being back with his family. The young man lets out a soft chuckle, saying that tickles, under the warm, watchful gaze of his dear wife Yul, observing from nearby. Yul asks if he is finally done, and Yeo Woon-hui explains that the patriarch was super pleased, which led to an early celebration with the squad. The young man feels the mood suddenly turn tense when his wife calls his name seriously, making him gulp and nervously respond. Yul lets out a deep sigh with a sad look on her face, asking if he could not just step down from the White Wolf unit altogether. Yeo Woon-hui is confused and asks if something is wrong, to which she replies that he was only supposed to hunt petty bandits, not face absolute evil. The young woman clutches her dress in distress, saying the enemy was a ruthless demon, reminding him that he is not even a trained clan martial artist. She continues venting, pointing out that he has never lifted anything heavier than little soil, leaving the Prota completely at a loss for words. Yul quietly weeps, asking what she and their daughter would have done if something terrible had happened to him during that deadly fight. The little girl picks up on the sadness and asks if mommy is crying, while the Prota realizes just how blind he was to his wife's feelings. He admits he was completely naive to think everything would be fine just by passing off the victory credit, and he sincerely apologizes to her. He gently cups her face, promising with total sincerity that if it is her wish, he will resign as commander first thing tomorrow morning. Yul looks away, flustered, grumbling that he always knows the exact words to soothe her, even though he insists he is being dead serious. She mentions noticing how attached he has grown to the squad, admitting she knows the commander seat is not something he can just walk away from now. Accepting the situation, Yul holds up 2 fingers toward her husband, firmly stating that he will have to make her 2 promises. Yeo Woon-hui looks at her in surprise, asking what kind of promises she wants him to make from this point forward. A week rolls by, and the sound of crisp strikes slicing through the air begins echoing across the training grounds under the bright blue sky. Little Soil is happily training in the yard, holding a small tree branch, pretending to be a legendary top-tier warrior. She has a blast striking attack poses and pulling off nimble jumps while swinging her little stick at the empty air. Yeo Woon-hui watches her with a proud smile on his face while holding a wooden training sword to practice a few basic drills. That moment, he reflects on the 2 major promises his wife Yul demanded from him before agreeing to let him keep the post. Her first condition was that he had to stay completely clear of dangerous missions as much as humanly possible. The Prota goes through a few light swings with the wooden sword while continuing to replay the serious words of his beloved. Yul's second condition was that he had to start training in real martial arts so he could actually defend himself if push came to shove. He wraps up his sequence of practice swings, lets out a relaxed sigh, and settles his stance in the middle of the empty yard. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps catches his attention, making him turn around with a curious and sharp look. Peng Doan steps onto the grounds and greets him politely, while the Prota asks who he is, with his daughter playing in the background. The young man introduces himself, saying it is an honor to meet him, mentioning he heard rumors that the commander was practicing basic martial arts. The Prota replies that gossip travels fast, and Dohwan smirks to himself, thinking it is ridiculous that someone like this is running the squad. He thinks the Prota is just an arrogant lightweight, unable to grasp why the unit's veteran warriors blindly follow his lead. The young master notes there are plenty of weird things about the commander, seeing how he pulled off a massive achievement, yet acts totally passive and humble. He recalls that Yeo Woon-hui even turned down the post initially, growing suspicious of a cryptic warning he received earlier about the guy. The young man remembers the quiet warning not to pull any stunts against the new commander, which only adds fuel to his doubts. Snapping back to the moment, Do-won offers to help him with his drills, asking how the Prota feels about getting some pointers from him. He argues that trying different approaches is always good, guessing the Prota must be bored out of his mind just grinding basic swings. Yeo Woon-hui subtly grins, seeing right through the gentle words of the clan's young master, but he decides to play dumb and asks what he suggests, to which Do-hwan replies that true growth only comes through real sparring. The Prota nods thoughtfully, while the opponent suggests that he needs to get used to the heat of real combat as soon as possible. With a fake, slick smile on his face, Do-won gives a formal bow and invites him to a quick, light sparring session right there. Yeo Woon-hui locks eyes with him, his red gaze flashing, mockingly wondering if the gap between them is not a bit too wide for a simple spar. The opponent smooths things over, saying it is purely informal, just trading a few light hits to point out his flaws, and the Prota takes the deal. Do-won tells the young man to use the wooden sword in his hand and show the swing he was practicing so he can evaluate it. The prota fakes being clumsy as he mimics the swing, while the opponent pretends to give serious tips on form, telling him not to let the weapon lead his balance. The prota scratches his head, acting like it is super difficult, and Do-won chuckles arrogantly, believing everything is going exactly to plan. Harboring shady intentions, Do-won challenges him to go ahead and launch a direct all-out attack to test his real combat chops. He cockily guarantees that the young man can come at him with everything he has got, claiming he will not be able to land a scratch anyway. Yo Woon-hui tightens his grip on the wooden sword with immense strength, while the opponent encourages him to throw the first strike. In the blink of an eye, the prota bursts forward with absurd speed, creating a massive wave of air pressure across the training yard. He instantly materializes right in front of the stunned opponent, bringing a devastating wooden blade strike to a dead stop an inch from his face. Do-won's eyes go wide in absolute shock as he registers the terrifying speed and monstrous power behind that impossible move. All he can see is a chilling demonic silhouette with blazing red eyes radiating pure fury and bloodlust right before him. The young master freezes in sheer terror, breaking into a cold sweat with a look of pure panic before that crushing presence. Do-won collapses to the ground in total fright, letting out a frantic cry while the commander simply looks down at him with a calm face. The young man dials back his intimidating aura and, with his usual gentleness, asks if the young master is feeling all right. Still shaking and hyperventilating from the shock, Do-won desperately asks what kind of terrifying power that was supposed to be. Yeo Woon-hui just keeps his calm smile and plays totally dumb, innocently asking what on earth just happened. The sun shines brightly across the blue sky the following morning over the main training grounds, bringing a fresh start for the unit. The entire White Wolf unit lines up in a sharp, disciplined formation, patiently waiting for their commander to show up. Gu Tae-san takes the lead with a commanding presence, shouting at the top of his lungs to make sure every soldier is locked in. Yeo Woon-hui casually strolls up to them, warmly asking if everyone managed to get some solid rest. Gu Tae-san confirms they did, reminding the commander that he mentioned having a very important topic to discuss with the squad. The prota jokingly asks if they are still unhappy with his leadership and planning to demand his resignation all over again. The soldiers instantly panic, frantically explaining that was entirely the old vice commander's fault and that they were just being used. Gu Tae-san clears his throat awkwardly, calls for quiet, and decides to cut straight to the chase of this important meeting. He explains that after that last brutal battle, all of them clearly saw their own shortcomings and know they only survived thanks to the commander. The warrior bows formally, resolutely begging the prota to personally train them and help them become truly elite fighters. The entire squad waits on pins and needles for the leader's answer, hoping he will accept their request to guide them through real training. Yeo Woon-hui looks at them with a deep, knowing gaze, thoughtfully asking if they genuinely want to level up their strength. The prota accepts the request with a smile, but gives a firm warning that they had better be fully prepared for what is coming. He warns them with an amused glint in his eye that his training regimen is brutally strict, exhausting, and extremely tough to survive. Right on day one, the soldiers begin suffering through the crushing physical workload laid out by the prota in the yard. The men cry out in pure agony as they push past their absolute limits, carrying massive boulders on their backs under the blazing sun. While the soldiers struggle through the grueling workout, Yeo Woon-hui peacefully sips his tea, reflecting that the body is the true vessel of martial arts. He thinks to himself that one needs proper conditioning to handle high-tier arts, and that many would claim it is far too late for these men to grow. However, the prota can clearly see the hidden diamond in the rough inside every single one of those dedicated warriors. He knows full well they have what it takes to step into a much higher martial realm if they stick with the grind. Yeo Woon-hui stays focused on his books and tea, but quickly notices someone spying on his every move from afar with suspicion. Perched up on the roof, Do-won watches the prota, wondering if he should leave him alone for now, totally hooked on figuring out his real identity. The prota decides to pay him no mind out of curiosity to see what the kid does next, while Do-won wonders if everyone here has lost their minds. The young master is super frustrated, completely unable to wrap his head around why the soldiers are subjecting themselves to this daily torture. He shivers, recalling the time he recklessly challenged the commander, only to end up frozen in fear before that terrifying presence. The memory of that day shook his mind and body to the core, leaving deep scars regarding the prota's true power level. That nightmare haunted him for nights on end, convincing him that the man is no ordinary teacher and that he needs to dig deeper. As a result of his constant stakeout, he ends up spotting the prota's wife, Yule, strolling gracefully and peacefully across the clan grounds. Right after, little Soil comes running out full of energy, shouting for her dad while spreading pure cuteness wherever she goes. Seeing that sweet scene of a happy, tight-knit family, the spy catches himself thinking that starting a nice family like that might not be so bad. Do-won catches himself smiling warmly as he watches Yeo Woon-hui share a sweet moment with his wife and little girl. But he quickly snaps out of it, shakes his head frantically, and tries to get his head back in the game for his investigation. He gets annoyed that he has uncovered zero intel on the prota's background, totally missing the fact that the man already clocked him there. Yeo Woon-hui snaps his technique manual shut with a crisp thud and gets up to wrap up the day's training session. He praises the soldiers, saying they hung in there way better than expected, prompting the exhausted squad to bow and thank their commander. The prota mentions they are free to quit whenever they want, but promises that if they hit their daily goals like today, he will give them what they are after. He gives his word that he will deliver on the promise, leaving the soldiers crazy motivated and hyped for the chance to level up. Watching from a distance, Do-won is left scratching his head over what the prota meant by giving them what they want, while the crew yells that they will never quit. The young master is thoroughly baffled by the whole setup, wondering what on earth is actually happening with this military unit. He cannot understand why all these hardened fighters look so motivated and locked in under the command of such a peaceful guy. Later that night, the weather takes a sudden turn, and an ominous, mysterious atmosphere blankets the dense woods surrounding the clan. Yeo Woon-hui walks alone and silently through the dark tree line under the thick cover of night. Hidden in the shadows of the nearby branches, Do-won tails him quietly, keeping his eyes glued to the man's every move. The spy wonders why he would head into the woods alone at this hour, determined that this time he is going to expose the commander's facade. But in a fraction of a second, the prota mysteriously vanishes from the kid's sight, leaving him completely stunned and frozen. Do-won mutters in frustration and tries to track his trail, but gets caught off guard when he senses a terrifying presence materialize right above him. Do-won bolts at full speed, jumping across the treetops in the dead of night, desperately thinking he cannot afford to lose the commander now. He stops at the edge of a cliff, panting for air, incredulously asking himself how a simple scholar could move with such unbelievable speed. Looking down, Do-won spots the commander standing in the middle of a dark clearing gripping a real steel sword, wondering what he is up to. The prota sharpens his gaze and channels his internal energy into the steel blade, making the edge blaze brightly with golden sparks. He begins executing crisp, razor-sharp sword drills in the middle of the night, leaving Do-won completely awestruck and frozen watching the display. Yeo Woon-hui pulls off incredibly graceful slashes, carving gorgeous golden arcs of raw cutting energy all around his body. Suddenly, a massive beam of brilliant blue energy erupts straight from his blade, shooting directly toward the starry night sky. The dazzling light show created by the prota's strike illuminates the darkness of the night under the soft glow of the crescent moon. With supreme mastery and total poise, Yeo Woon-hui wraps up the routine and smoothly slides his sword back into its scabbard. Do-won drops to his knees behind a tree, breaking into a cold sweat, completely mind-blown by the commander's insane display of power. The next day, Yeo Woon-hui takes advantage of the peaceful courtyard vibe to quietly read his book near some stone clan structures. Do-won decides to walk right up to him, prompting the commander to look up and calmly ask what brings him over. Without dancing around the topic, the young master looks him dead in the eye and asks if he was truly the one who took down the demon of extreme evil. The prota stays quiet, while Do-won thinks to himself that he knew something was up, since beating that archdemon would be near impossible for the squad. He points out that the evaluation of the White Wolf unit is off, since he has known those guys since childhood and knows their skill ceiling. Woon-hui realizes the kid has already connected the dots, asking directly what he plans to do with that truth from here on out. The prota locks a deep, piercing gaze on the young man and profoundly mentions that if he had to give an honest answer to that big question. The prota reveals that his one and only true desire in this entire world is simply being able to protect his beloved family from any harm. Seeing his family safe, happy, and together within the clan is the main driving force that pushes him to keep fighting and growing stronger. He adds that he also wants to protect the place they call home, firmly stating that this is honestly all that matters to him. The prota coldly declares that he will show zero mercy toward any threat or enemy that tries to bring harm to his loved ones. Do-won is deeply moved by the man's genuine resolve and noble spirit, finally understanding what truly drives him. Totally sold on following this extraordinary leader, the young man makes a major call and drops to his knees before the prota. He bows with deep respect, introduces himself as Peng Do-hwan, and loudly declares that he chooses to follow and serve the commander from this day forward. The young master genuinely asks to be accepted into the squad, leaving the other warriors training in the background totally shocked by the scene. Shortly after, the White Wolf unit's training is in full swing out in the yard, with the soldiers completely locked into their intense workout. A few clan members watch from a distance, whispering how they expected the young master to stir up trouble, yet here they are all grinding together. Yo Woon-hui strolls peacefully across the grounds, observing his squad's relentless effort as the boys keep drilling their strikes. He quietly wonders to himself if this whole current setup is not just some bizarre, mysterious twist of fate. The Prota closely watches each of his subordinates as they give it their all, swinging their heavy training gear with everything they have got. He recalls that the exact same people who formed the feared Red Wolf unit in his past life are all gathered right here again in this one. The Prota shares a heartfelt wish that in this second chance at life, neither he nor any of his men will ever meet a tragic end again. He looks at the determined faces of his training crew with a nostalgic gaze, flooded with deep memories of the past. The young man hardens his resolve, making up his mind that this time around, he is going to make sure things turn out right for all of them. The scene shifts back to the clan's main training yard under the bright afternoon sun and the lazy clouds drifting through the blue sky. Gutai-san dramatically yells in pure disbelief over the commander's call, indignantly asking why on earth they are being given 2 full days off. The other soldiers tear up and plead with the leader not to give up on them, frantically apologizing even though they have no clue what they did wrong. In a funny, chibi-like vibe, the Prota tries to calm them down, explaining they just need rest, but the boys stubbornly insist on grinding more. He lets out an awkward laugh at their stubbornness, thinking that constantly beating up the body is not the only path to real growth. With his sharp martial master's eye, he can clearly see that the men's muscles and physical frames have hit a brick wall of pure fatigue. He firmly insists that learning how to recover is key to leveling up without wrecking your body, ordering them to chill out and enjoy the break. Gutai-san pouts a bit as he takes the order, but quickly glances over, curiously pointing at something hiding just behind the wall. Little Soil peeks her head out shyly, catching the Prota's eye as he asks if she did not come alone today. Gutai-san gulps and sheepishly admits the little girl begged so hard to tag along that he could not say no, melting the soldiers' hearts with cuteness. The Prota gives the little girl a warm smile, gently telling her to come out of hiding and say hello to the squad. Soil takes a shy, blushing step forward, stuttering a super sweet greeting that instantly turns the tough warriors into absolute softies. Gute-san walks over with a huge, friendly grin to greet her, which gives the little girl a tiny scare from her own shyness. Intimidated by the warrior's massive build, she quickly bolts and buries herself right under her father's dark robes in the middle of the yard. The giant is completely heartbroken, making a hilarious face of pure emotional devastation after getting rejected by the sweet girl. Yo Woon-hui finds it hilarious, playfully noting how weird it is that she is scared of him, considering she loved the patriarch right off the bat. Gutai-san whines that people usually cry happy tears when they see him, but Yo Woon-hui thinks to himself that folks are actually just terrified of his face. Just then, little Soil walks up holding a small handkerchief, adorably asking him to please stop crying once and for all. Gutai-san is deeply touched and blushes hard at the sweet gesture, while the commander cannot hold back his laughter in the back. Young heir Peng Seo-jin walks into the yard, pleasantly asking what is causing so much fun and laughter among them right now. He greets the Prota, mentioning that everyone is talking about how the White Wolf unit is now the crown jewel of the Ping clan. Gutai-san proudly replies that he is honored by the compliment, but acknowledges the squad still has a long training road ahead. Peng Seo-jin just flashes a warm, knowing smile as he looks at the firm, confident posture of those dedicated squad fighters. Right after, he lets the Prota know that the real reason for his visit is to make a personal request to his brother-in-law. Seo-jin suggests the two of them step out for a walk to catch some fresh air outside the main grounds of the Hebei clan. They arrive at a nearby village where the locals welcome the young heir with open arms, showing massive gratitude for his constant help. The villagers offer a hearty meal to Seo-jin, who politely thanks them, telling them they really do not need to go through all this trouble for him. The young man tells the villagers to reach out whenever trouble brews, adding with a smile that the best payback is just living happy lives. Later, while strolling down a quiet trail, the young heir asks Yo Woon-hui what Sodom Village was like back when he used to live there. The two take a seat at a pavilion, and Seo-jin shares that he heard from his sister Yul that Sodom was a gorgeous place full of kind, simple folks. He opens up, saying he used to visit that isolated pavilion alone in the past, whenever the heavy clan expectations got too suffocating. Seo-jin recalls when he saved the villagers from bandits, and they actually blamed him, saying his temporary rescue would only bring worse retaliation later. Because of that, he reveals he made a vow to take full responsibility for the village's safety and well-being for the rest of his life. The young master shares that the locals only started trusting him and smiling after he kept coming back time and again to look out for them. He focuses his gaze and admits that if he had not made it back alive from that last mission, he never would have been able to keep that promise. He adds that he never got the chance to properly thank the mystery savior who pulled him back from the brink when he was about to check out. Seo-jin locks eyes with the prota, stating with total certainty that, as crazy as it sounds, he believes that mystery savior was his brother-in-law all along. Yo Woon-hui listens in silence and simply gives a subtle nod, quietly confirming the young heir's suspicions. The young man says he already had a hunch and thanks him, following up by asking what really made his brother-in-law risk his own neck to save him. Yo Woon-hui smirks warmly, softly answering that he did it simply because the young heir treated him differently from everyone else. He reveals that Seo-jin was the very first person in the clan to welcome him with open arms and treat him like real family. The prota confesses he came prepared to take all kinds of disrespect, but the moment they met, the young man treated him with warmth and called him brother. Seo-jin says that was just natural, advising him to slowly show his real power, since hiding that much strength will only bring annoying headaches later. He suggests that his brother-in-law put his trust in the Peng clan, noting that even if he goes all out, the clan has more than enough weight to back him up. Seo-jin argues that while the prota may not want to rule over anyone, he should at least have the freedom to live in peace with his own power. Woon-hui silently reflects on the idea of not ruling yet living freely, finding his brother-in-law's advice super thoughtful and comforting. He smiles and promises to have his back as family, asking if they really need a special reason to look out for one another. Meanwhile, the scene cuts back to the main gates of the Hebei Peng clan under clear skies and the bright afternoon sun. A few clan guards walk the perimeter, whispering nervously about wild, chaotic rumors regarding the guests who are about to arrive. The guards find it crazy that they have to treat rowdy troublemakers as VIP guests, thinking the patriarch would never allow such a thing. In another hall, one of the clan advisors seriously questions if the patriarch truly intends to host and house those problematic visitors. Peng Mugang crosses his arms with a knowing smirk, asking if the advisor is still against the call despite knowing their terrible track record. The advisor reminds the leader that these guests are the feared Sarim Squad, an elite task force formed by the Heavyweight Martial Alliance. The squad is made up of exceptional prodigies groomed specifically to go toe-to-toe against the unorthodox Black Gate faction. Under the excuse of their final field training, the squad visits major Murim families, leaving a trail of brawls and chaos everywhere they step. He brings up a nasty rumor that the squad leader insulted a prominent patriarch and even broke both of his son's arms without hesitation. The elder notes that major houses like the Namgung and Tang clans took hits, and that no sect is safe from the group's wild antics. The advisor suggests turning them away before things get messy, but Peng Mugang declines, deciding they will host them exactly as planned. The patriarch firmly declares that he already gave his word, and turning them away now would only bring bigger, more exhausting problems for the clan. The towering leader decides the best move for now is to just watch how those young punks carry themselves and see what they are really after. The clan warriors agree, deciding to keep a close eye on the arrogant troublemakers who are about to step onto the property. At the front gates, the Peng clan reps welcome the visitors with formal bows, thanking them for the long trek and leading the way inside. One of the palace maids lets out a nervous sigh upon spotting the guests, quietly whispering to her co-worker that they are finally here. The cocky prodigies of the Sarim squad begin strutting through the courtyard, drawing suspicious glares from everyone around them. Fighter Guak Se-du mocks the Peng clan's rep, saying he wants to see if the patriarch is as fun as his son, while the girl Yeon So-ye clowns on Seo-jin. The arrogant Yu Woon-tak walks close behind, dismissively reminding them that, at the end of the day, it was the Peng clan that took out the archdemon. Guak Se-du confusedly asks what this demon of extreme evil even is, while his teammate laughs at his ignorance and the leader tells them all to zip it. Leader Jo Min points out that this is also a place home to masters who can teach them a thing or two, ordering everyone to stay quiet and keep moving. The squad's female member agrees with the boss and moves along, while the Peng clan guide quietly walks ahead of them. One of the clan maids chats playfully with the little heiress, saying it is totally fine if she misses the kick during their game. Soil replies that it is all good, and that the maid will have to chase the ball if she misses, but promises she is going to nail the shot. The little girl kicks the ball with all her might, but the maid chuckles, reminding her that she should not close her eyes right when she kicks. The squad members find Soil super adorable and ask who she is, sending the guide into an absolute panic. The guide quickly explains to Jo Min that the precious little girl is young Soil, the youngest granddaughter of the great Peng clan patriarch. Jo Min checks the girl out with keen curiosity, asking if there would be any issue if he walked over to get to know her better. The guide gets super nervous at the thought and tries to step in, politely reminding them that the clan leader is already waiting for their meeting. Suddenly, a hand cuts sharply through the air as someone snaps aggressively about the nerve of a simple servant. Yeon So-ye steps up annoyed, claiming they just want to say hi to the patriarch's granddaughter, demanding how a mere servant dares get in the way. Guak Se-du grabs the guide by the collar, asking if he is scared of getting broken like that other prominent leader's kid. Another squad member laughs at the scene, warning that if the guide heard the rumors about them, he should just know his place and stay down. However, a sharp thud cuts through the air as Guak Se-du takes a direct hit to the face from the red ball the little girl had just kicked. The ball keeps bouncing, tagging the faces of the other squad members, leaving Yeon So-ye completely stunned and ticked off by the hit. Jo Min is fast enough to catch the bouncing red ball with one hand right in front of his face. Soil shouts loudly, telling them to stop that right now, firmly stomping her foot after landing the trick shot. The little girl calls the visitors mean bullies for hurting the guide, angrily demanding that they knock it off. Yeon So-ye gets heated at being called a bully and stomps toward the little girl with a glare, calling her a cheeky brat. The girl delivers a painful forehead flick right onto Soyul, who lets out a sharp cry of pain from the sudden hit. Yeon So-ye mentions the kid should consider herself lucky she is cute, while her squadmate notes she held back most of her power. Soil cannot hold back the sting on her forehead and starts crying out loud in the middle of the clan courtyard. Yeon So-ye hears a deep, heavy voice behind her and turns around startled, realizing a massive figure is closing in. Gute-san stands tall right behind the girl with a dead serious face, demanding to know what she thinks she is doing to their young lady. The girl is taken aback by his massive build, while Guak Se-du cockily asks if this is how the Ping clan treats its guests. Gute-san menacingly fires back that they need to start acting like guests if they want to be treated with any respect. Guak Se-du loses his cool at the response, asking if a low-tier warrior is really trying to pick a fight with him. Right in the middle of the high-tension standoff, someone begins clapping slowly and sarcastically to grab everyone's attention. Jo Min tells everyone to cool it, questioning if it would not look bad for both sides if a tiny misunderstanding blew out of proportion. A shadowy figure steps out, introducing himself as Oh Chae-moo, vice commander of the White Wolf unit, demanding answers for messing with the Peng clan. Jo Min smirks, noting he is the famous elite squad member everyone talks about, apologizing for not recognizing him sooner. The young man says he will explain things later, but suggests that as martial artists, they should settle this business the proper way. Jo Min clasps his hands in a show of respect, smoothly proposing a friendly sparring duel to clear the air. Jo Min pitches a quick duel with the fighters who took down the archdemon, while Oh Chae-moo clocks right away that the guy is shady. Oh Chae-moo realizes taking the bait would be an obvious trap, and that he could never look his commander in the eye if he fell for their game. Nearby, the maid tries to comfort little Soyul, who is crying hard, while the bruised guide hangs his head in regret. Feeling cornered by the opponent's cheap taunt, Oh Chae-moo grits his teeth in anger and ends up taking the challenge. He preps for combat and accepts the duel, determined to clear the disrespect his unit just took. Meanwhile, inside the Ping clan's main hall, the young heir rushes in, asking his father if he is not even a little worried. Peng Mugang casually takes a sip, replying he has zero reason to sweat over simple pests who just strolled into his house. Peng Seo-jin warns that his father is being way too chill, asking if there is a hidden angle behind letting that squad in. The patriarch compliments his son's sharp instincts, but says he does not need the full picture just yet, until a guard bursts in calling for the boss. The guard runs into the room totally out of breath, frantically trying to explain the urgent situation that just went down in the yard. The patriarch yells in shock, demanding to know what happened as he sees the guard's panic over the family incident. Peng Mugang is stunned to hear that on top of jumping one of his servants, the visitors dared to pull something way worse. The leader slams the table in pure rage upon hearing they hurt little Soil, while Seo-jin tries to calm him down and offers to go check it out. Overcome with fury, the giant patriarch refuses to sit around, yelling that the two of them are going to handle this together. Peng Seo-jin begs his dad to stay put, warning his presence would turn this into a full-blown war, offering to run ahead while the old man holds back. Left alone in the room, the Peng clan boss tries to cool down with a drink, letting out a deep sigh after all the sudden drama. Peng Mugang is still fuming from afar over someone touching his granddaughter. While out in the yard, Jo Min thanks the White Wolf fighters for taking the match. Jo Min suggests they fight one-on-one in a fair rotation, pitching that they keep it friendly to maintain peace between the factions. Ochemu tells Gu Tai-san it is just a quick drill and asks him to go easy on the opponent, to which the big guy calmly agrees. Gu Tai-san steps into the ring, saying he will keep things light, asking who wants to step up first to take him on. Gwaksadu steps forward with an arrogant swagger, introducing himself as the Sarim squad's point man to kick off the fight. The cocky young man takes a combat stance, drawing his sword, and politely asks the big guy to guide him through the match. Gu Tai-san smirks dismissively and sets his stance as well, inviting the opponent to start trading hits without wasting time. Gwaksadu makes a lightning-fast swing with his blade and charges straight in for a direct hit. Gwaksadu throws a heavy strike, but Gu Tai-san blocks the hit with absolute ease and rock-solid balance, not giving up an inch. The young squad fighter grinds his teeth in shock, realizing Gu Tai-san's absurd durability and wondering why he is built like a brick wall. The kid tries to force the hit, but gets violently shoved back by the big guy, tumbling backward while coughing from the sheer impact. Down on the dirt, Gwaksadu groans in pain, thinking it feels like he is fighting a grizzly bear or a walking boulder instead of a human. Jo-min walks up to him with a cold, piercing glare, asking if he is actually trying or just messing around in the ring. The leader sternly warns that his loss would be a loss for the entire martial alliance, demanding he does not embarrass the master who raised him. Gwaksadu tightens his grip on the hilt with white knuckles, resolutely replying that he hears his squad leader loud and clear. The young man stumbles back up, apologizes for the delay, and asks to pick up where they left off, getting a thumbs up from the big guy. Gwaksadu leaps high toward the opponent with his blade ready, prepping a devastating aerial slash on Gu Tai-san. The young man attacks with eyes blazing in fury, channeling a scary red aura straight at his opponent to secure the win. Gu Tai-san's eyes go wide as he realizes the kid's strike carries genuine lethal intent, way out of line for a friendly spar. The rapid slash cuts through the air with violent speed, tagging the big guy cleanly in the blink of an eye. The edge of Gwaksadu's sword comes away, coated in crimson, revealing the serious nature of the strike landed on the clan defender. Gu Tai-san freezes in pure shock as blood begins dripping from his shoulder, unable to believe things escalated to this point. The White Wolf Unit twins and Ochemu watch in absolute horror seeing their brother-in-arms get tagged like that in a dirty move. The towering powerhouse drops to one knee in the arena, while Ochemu frantically screams his wounded comrade's name. Ochemu catches his friend in anger, demanding to know why they targeted a vital spot during practice, while Gu Tai-san insists he is fine. Yeon So-ye mocks the reaction, claiming they are making a massive drama out of a tiny scratch, but Jo-min instantly tells her to shut it. Jo-min offers a formal bow of respect, offering a slick apology for his teammates' out-of-line behavior during the spar. The squad leader keeps a sly grin on his face, adding that at the end of the day, the cut was not fatal for the warrior. Ochemu boils over the guy's snark and fake manners, especially as he keeps brushing it off, saying his martial career is not ruined. Jo-min suggests continuing the match normally, but Ochemu calls out the lethal hit, to which the guy just shrugs that he already apologized. The squad leader lets out a light chuckle, saying they probably will not visit this place again anyway, showing complete disrespect for the Peng clan. Ochemu gets heated over the sheer disrespect, silently cursing the spoiled, ill-mannered punks from the martial alliance. Suddenly, a figure dressed in dark robes calmly strolls toward them, accepting the challenge with a chillingly cold demeanor. Ochemu instantly recognizes his commander, who says that since they traveled from so far away, it is only right to keep the match going. The Prota introduces himself as the commander of the White Wolf unit, and Jo-min cheers up, praising the opposing leader's sensible call. The young squad leader puts on a challenging smirk, suggesting that if they are really doing this, they should make things way more interesting. Yeo Woon-hui keeps his cool as always, bluntly proposing that the young leader take him on directly in a back-to-back match in the yard. Jo-min finds the offer odd, while Yeo Woon-hui pokes fun at himself, claiming he is the weakest link in his unit and only knows the absolute basics. Jo-min wonders in annoyance if the guy is clowning him, but decides to keep his cool and accepts the duel against the squad commander. The young leader declares that the sparring match is back on, getting into position while firmly gripping the hilt of his own sword. The two leaders now stand face to face in the center of the Peng clan courtyard, as everyone around watches the next clash begin. The Sarim squad opponent bursts forward at blinding speed, determined to wrap up the fight in a single clean sweep. The young warrior lets out a loud shout as he unloads all his strength into the hit, while Yeo Woon-hui stands completely still with total chill. With a subtle and crazy precise flick of his sword, the Prota parries the attacker and launches him flying straight up into the air. Yan Soye and her teammates stand there totally jaw-dropped, terrified, and wondering how their boss just got swatted away like a fly. Yo Woon Hui slowly turns back toward the rest of the crew with a chilling red glare, firmly telling the next one to step right up. Jo Min is left completely speechless before the opponent's crushing strength, furiously venting his frustration in his own head. The girl realizes the clan was sandbagging on purpose, wondering if this whole setup was staged just to clown on their squad. The White Wolf unit twins start laughing right in their faces, mockingly yelling for the next guy to hurry up since the boss is waiting. Jo Min evaluates the opponent seriously, brushing off his teammates' warning to be careful, thinking to himself that this guy is built completely different. Jo Min silently calls his beaten teammate useless dead weight, angrily wondering why he did not remember his warnings. He thinks that no matter the Prota's strength, he himself is an elite prodigy, admitting out loud that the man actually managed to surprise him. The young man takes his stance with blade drawn, playfully warning the opponent to watch his step since his sword does not play nice. Yo Woon Hui taunts him back, saying guys with zero technique always talk like that, driving the young leader crazy with that level of shade. The young man releases a scary blue aura around his blade, charging in fully intending to handicap the commander in this sparring match. Oh Chemu watches the power display in awe, asking his squadmates if they can identify that high-tier technique. It turns out to be the Eight Roars sword art, a legendary style created by the Sword Emperor himself, one of the 12 supreme beings of Murim. They are stunned that someone so young has already mastered such a dangerous and rare style, passed down directly by a grandmaster. The vice commander realizes that even though their boss is insanely strong, the young alliance fighter is definitely not someone to take lightly. The kid leaps up and starts a spinning aerial barrage, coming down with the tip of his sword aimed right at the Prota's head. Heavy clangs echo across the courtyard as the two trade rapid strikes, throwing violent shockwaves all over the sparring ring. Yo Woon Hui effortlessly blocks every incoming strike with pinpoint accuracy, rocking a calm, confident smirk the whole time. Jo Min steps back after the combo, whining in frustration that the opponent is dodging every single hit with annoying perfection. The young man then pools an even larger amount of spirit energy into his blue blade, yelling out to ask if the Prota can dodge this one. He leaps once more, triggering the powerful falling meteor sword technique, crashing down like a massive blast of energy on the commander. A massive explosion rocks the Peng clan training yard, kicking up a thick wall of dust and debris from Jo Min's heavy strike. As the dust settles, the young leader turns totally pale in shock, realizing the Prota blocked that devastating bomb with zero sweat. The ground around the commander is completely torn up, but he remains untouched, completely shattering the kid's dream of seeing him beg for mercy. Totally overwhelmed and unable to accept what he is seeing, the young man screams in rage that this makes zero sense. Suddenly, the Prota pops up right in front of the kid's face with a chilling grin, calmly letting him know that it is his turn to swing. Jo Min's eyes go wide as he lets out a gasp of pure panic, feeling the overwhelming, terrifying aura rolling off the unit commander. The Prota raises his sword high overhead with both hands, prepping a single focused strike to close out the match for good. A massive and terrifying stream of dark energy rains down from the sky, aiming straight for the helpless Alliance squad leader. The kid freezes in sheer horror, his pupils blown wide before the incoming doom about to land directly on him. The devastating strike shaves right past the young man, splitting the air with terrifying force and unleashing a bright flash before his eyes. The young leader stands there completely frozen with blank eyes, drooling in pure terror after dodging the Reaper by just a few inches. His legs give out entirely, and he drops to his knees right in front of the Prota, totally broken with zero fight left in him. The kid's sword slips from his trembling hands, while Yo Woon Hui smoothly sheathes his weapon, declaring the sparring match officially over. The White Wolf unit warriors break into hyped victory cheers, celebrating how easily their commander handled business. The squad girl sarcastically compliments the Prota, while her teammate rushes over to check on Jo Min, asking if he is badly hurt. The squad girl forces an awkward smile, trying hard to mask the sheer panic and embarrassment the entire team is feeling right now. The young Peng clan heir steps up to congratulate his brother-in-law on the massive win, but the Prota just casually brushes it off as no big deal. The brother-in-law whispers that the unit's cloud is about to blow up, adding he will draft the alliance report without blowing the Prota's secret cover. The Prota surprises him by saying that this time he does not need to hide anything in the report, while Jo Min quietly starts walking away. The commander mentions having something important to tell the heir in private, while Jo Min storms off holding back pure rage in his chest. Shortly after, a piercing scream of pure hatred echoes through the guest wing hallways, startling the rest of the squad. The young leader trashes the room, furiously yelling that he will never accept taking such a humiliating and pathetic beatdown. He immediately orders everyone to pack their bags and bounce, leaving the girl surprised that they are taking off so early. Her teammate puts a hand on his shoulder and agrees, suggesting it would be way better to rest up for at least one more day before hitting the road. However, the kid spins around with a terrifying look, glaring at his teammate with bloodshot eyes full of pure rage and bad intentions. Without a single word of warning, Jo-min throws a heavy punch square into Gwak Se-doo's face, sending him flying backward. The kid crashes down while the enraged leader looms over him, coldly warning him never to dare second-guess his orders again. With a completely unhinged look, the young man wraps up his threat, promising to end him on the spot if he tries talking back during the trip. Later that same night, under the pitch-black sky, the clan's main exit gates slowly open up for the young fighter's departure. The squad members walk out in dead silence, with leader Jo-min leading the pack with a cold, scowling face. Before disappearing into the dark, the kid pauses for a split second, glancing back with deep, burning resentment over that loss. The silhouettes of the 4 Sarim squad fighters slowly fade into the chilly night fog, leaving the residents behind. As the visitors move away from the clan, someone watches them from atop the Imperial-style roof, tracking every step the young men take. It is none other than the Prota Yeo Wun-hui, quietly watching their exit with his arms crossed under the dim starlight. The scene shifts to the middle of a dense, shadowy forest, where heavy footsteps echo along the deserted path between towering trees. Jo-min keeps walking through the dark woods in silence, but suddenly halts, glancing around suspiciously after picking up a sound. The kid tries to wrap his head around who the Prota really is, thinking he has never felt such crushing pressure and bloodlust from anyone before. He admits in his own thoughts that, even if only for a second, he genuinely felt the cold grip of the Reaper facing that man's strike. The young man feels incredibly bitter about getting brought down like that, forced to swallow such a humiliating defeat. Shaking his head, Jo-min decides to brush it off, thinking that as long as their paths never cross again, everything will be completely fine. The young leader gets his swagger back with a cocky grin, reassuring himself that his future in the Martial Alliance is going to be massive. Right then, small black spheres mysteriously begin rolling across the ground beside them, instantly catching the squad's attention. The squad leader panics upon noticing one of the spheres cracking right next to his feet, letting out a startled cry. Dense purple smoke spreads in a flash, and someone in the squad frantically yells for everyone to hold their breath because it is poison gas. Under the full moon's glow, sinister figures in black hoods emerge cackling, looking down on the completely helpless squad. The leader of the Shadow Assassins wears a creepy grin, mocking the boys and commenting that he finally tracked down the famous Sarim squad. Jo-min freezes in pure panic upon recognizing the mark on the assassin's forehead, wondering if this is really what he thinks it is. The young man realizes he is staring down the feared black assassination unit of the Heavenly Cult, while the enemy thanks them for leaving so early. Jo-min knows all too well that this ruthless shadow unit is considered the most lethal, high-tier weapon of the entire Heavenly Demon Cult. Coughing from the poisonous fog, Jo-min realizes none of them can tap into their spirit energy, leaving him desperate with zero options. Young Gwak Se-doo also completely loses it upon realizing the enemies standing in front of them are the dreaded Heavenly Demon Cult warriors. Overcome with fear, the other squad member bolts into a frantic sprint to save his own skin, ignoring the leader's shouts to get back. In the blink of an eye, a thrown dagger cuts cleanly through the running kid's throat with pinpoint accuracy, ending his escape attempt. The enemy laughs out loud at the fallen body, mocking the crew and saying even a stray dog would laugh at these so-called Alliance prodigies. Jo-min gulps hard, realizing the assassins definitely want something from them, making up his mind that he has to find a way to make it out alive. With a cold, selfish glare, the young leader thinks that even if his squad mates have to go down, he personally has to walk away from this. Jo-min steps forward, bluntly asking what they want, making the old assassin laugh and praise how quickly the kid grasped the situation. The assassin offers to spare just one person who agrees to leak Martial Alliance secrets and act as an undercover mole for their cult. The old man adds that the survivor will be branded with a mark and given a lethal poison, leaving Yeon So-ye and Gwak Se-doo in dead silence. The girl tries to jump on the offer first, but Jo-min is way quicker, instantly stepping up to seal the deal with the assassins. Jo-min coldly argues that as the squad leader, he will be infinitely more useful and valuable to the cult's plans than his underlings. Gwak Se-doo totally loses his mind, grabbing the kid by the collar and screaming in pure rage over the shameless betrayal he just heard. Jo-min completely ignores his teammate's fury, turning back to the assassin boss with a slick look, saying he only has one condition. Wearing a dark grin, Jo-min points right at his own teammates, coldly asking the assassins to take them out of his sight. The assassins find the kid's cold-blooded move hilarious and happily take the deal, remarking that they were actually planning on doing just that anyway. Yeon So-ye screams in absolute despair, calling Jo-min pure trash and promising he will definitely burn for this cowardly betrayal. The assassins move in and ruthlessly wipe out the rest of the squad, leaving only Jo-min standing, who gets called over by the old man to seal the pact. The old man places a hand on Jo-min's head, sarcastically noting that for an Alliance prodigy, he turned out to be a very sharp kid. He informs the young man that from this day forward, his life belongs to the Black Assassination Unit, demanding he prove his worth from here on out. Jo-min bows respectfully, promising with an evil smirk that he will follow every single order to prove he made the right play. However, a splash of red suddenly splatters across the young man's face, making his eyes go wide in total shock as everything goes sideways. In a fraction of a second, the surrounding heavenly cult assassins start getting sliced apart by brilliant golden energy waves coming from an unseen foe. Jo-min watches in horror as a glowing blade flashes right before him, cutting down the assassins with terrifying ease. The overwhelming golden energy slashes instantly wipe out every single member of the Black Assassination Unit in that clearing. The proto-Yeo Woon-hui steps out from the shadows, noting the kid made the exact call he expected, leaving Jo-min in absolute shock. The proto steps into the moonlight, saying that if the kid had stuck to his principles until the end, his grim fate would have been completely different. Jo-min hysterically screams that this is not fair, crying that he only made that crazy choice because he just wanted to survive no matter what. The proto reminds him that even in his past life, the young man betrayed the Orthodox faction to join the evil cult, causing endless chaos along the way. The commander confesses that deep down he hoped the kid would make a different choice this time, coldly adding that he understands his frustration. Yeo Woon-hui raises his blade with a steady grip, his gaze completely locked in, determined to close the book on this painful chapter once and for all. The proto solemnly declares that everyone has to face the music for their own choices as he gets ready to deliver the final strike. He decides to stage the scene so it looks like the cult's shadow unit and the Sarim squad clashed and wiped each other out in the woods. Pang Seo-jin appears right behind him, confirming he will handle all the report details for the Martial Alliance, exactly how his brother-in-law requested. However, the clan heir voices a concern, questioning if filing the report like this will not end up turning that cowardly squad into martyrs. The proto replies that exposing the truth would trash the Martial Alliance's reputation, admitting that while he dislikes the idea, keeping up appearances is the better move. But the proto knows full well that no heroic title or posthumous honors will ever bring back the lives of those young fighters who just passed away. Young Pang Seo-jin goes along with his brother-in-law's call, but deep down keeps wondering how on earth he knew all of this was going to go down. He tries to figure out how the proto predicted that the shadow unit would ambush the crew, and that they would fold so easily to the enemy's deal. The heir watches the proto's back as they walk through the woods, silently wondering what kind of mysterious past his brother-in-law really holds. The scene shifts to a far-off place, where someone is painting a traditional canvas with a brush, until an unexpected report cuts in. The master asks in disbelief if all of them really went down in mutual destruction, getting a shaky confirmation from his kneeling subordinate. The cult leader screams in fury, asking if it makes any sense that elite shadow fighters got taken out in a basic scrap against mere rookies. He yells that the foolish demise of the Black Assassination Unit's top brass on such a simple mission is an absolute disgrace to the cult. Having zero patience for excuses, the elderly leader mutters that such incompetence is extremely annoying, leaving the servant shaking in terror. A terrifying black spiritual energy suddenly erupts from the leader's hand, beginning to choke the subordinate in a ruthless and deadly grip. The servant drops dead onto the grand hall floor within seconds, standing as a chilling reminder of the heavenly demon cult leader's cruelty. The cult leader clicks his tongue in disgust, concluding that something very bizarre and unexpected definitely went down during that forest mission. He crosses his arms with a cold look of vengeance, declaring that he is dying to find out who the jerk was that took down his men. Drop a like and comment if you want the next part.